Welcome to CenturyLink Conferencing. Please enter your passcode followed by the pound or hash key. And please hold while I confirm your passcode. Thank you. Your passcode is confirmed. When you hear the tone, you will be the first person to join the meeting. The line will be silent until another person joins.
Mics are unmuted.
Are we good? All right, welcome everyone. We're going to get started just a couple minutes early. Hopefully that's okay with everyone. So welcome. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. If you would please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Just so everyone is aware, we are live streaming today's meeting. So put on your best face, since we'll be giving this a try. But obviously, it's part of our effort to be more transparent and provide more opportunities for people to participate or be a part of and listen in on what we're doing. So we're very grateful to the Department of Education and the State Board of Education for the investment in this technology that allows us to do this today. So looking forward to having this happen on a more regular basis. So with that, if you wouldn't mind, Alexis, if you could call the roll, please.
President Sensman?
Here.
Vice President Lee?
Here.
Here. Dr. Crockett? Mr. Close?
Here.
Mr. Mason? Ms. Rice?
Here.
Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Mr. Twist? Ms. Yanov?
Woohoo! On time.
President Sensman, you have a quorum.
You missed that we are live streaming today.
Oh, even better. That's my luck.
Yeah. So we have a quorum. Okay, thank you, Alexis. Up next on the agenda is an organization or a company called RiskSense. I wanted to invite Michael DeMaria with CenturyLink up to kick us off. And just to preface this a little bit, Michael and I were at a meeting and happened to be chatting about just some issues in general with IT and tech. And there's definitely a intersection with some of the things that we have seen happening. A year ago we had a charter school that had their audit held up with malware. And then just a couple months ago, the Flagstaff Unified School District was held hostage with this. And so when Michael and I were speaking, I thought this would be a very topical subject matter for us to just receive some information about, and again, to be a resource to other charters that may want to be thinking about this, because it has had impact on our board and on our charter members that have to perform in front of us. So with that, Mr. DeMaria, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kathy. And even a company as large as mine, who does cybersecurity probably for every government agency, federal government agency, has other resources and vendors we work with who are experts in the field, because the field continues to evolve. So when Kathy and I talked, we said, do you know anyone who deals with this both at maybe a state level, school level? And recently we've been partnering with a company called RiskSense, who's here today to present, who actually has a contract with the state of Arizona and with New Mexico and other locations. And they're experts in the field of understanding where the threats are, and they're going to kind of go through that so you can have an idea of what the landscape looks like, because I think that's important, that everyone at least has a baseline understanding of kind of what risks everybody's dealing with at this point. And then at the end, they'll go through a few tools that they have. We won't overdo the techie stuff, but we wanted to make sure you had at least a baseline understanding of some risks that exist out there, and there's potential tools to fix those. So I'll introduce Mark Fidel. Will come up from RiskSense and present to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you. Do I have control of the presentation from here?
Yes,
I
you do.
do. Okay, great. There we go. So my name is Mark Fidel. I am a co-founder of a company called RiskSense. We are based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We work nationwide. We work a lot with state, local, and education, and we're seeing a lot of what I'm going to discuss today in terms of entities in state government, as well as we encompass that in education as well, being hit with ransomware in addition to a variety of other things. This will focus on ransomware. My background, just so that there's some familiarity, is I'm a finance geek. I'm an attorney. So I'm certainly not on the technical side of the world, but I know what we do, and I know what we do well. And so thank you for the comment earlier about tone down on the technical. That's easy for me to do. I appreciate the time you're providing us today. Just some background on the company. We're about 135, 140 people worldwide. We focus in the broad world of cybersecurity. We're in the space called threat and vulnerability management. And that means that we can work on either side of a breach or an incident. It's a lot less expensive for our customers to work with us before a breach than after in a cleanup scenario. We've been in existence since early 2006. Our predecessor company, first significant revenue in 2010. And this particular company, the C Corporation called RiskSense, was formed in 2015. We're venture-backed, privately held, and we are an offshoot of the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology in Socorro, New Mexico. If anybody's been to that metropolis, raise your hand. And the reason I bring that out is that our roots are in education, and we do quite a bit of educational outreach throughout each year, because the better educated the decision makers are, the better educated the end users are, the better off the environments tend to be. So let's jump right into it. Since 2016, there have been 727 reported incidents of ransomware, of a variety of attacks. And what I've done is broken these out into yellow equals ransomware, purple is a breach, blue is phishing, and red is something else. And often those something else's were students hacking into systems to either access, look at grades. That's what a lot of the others were. And that's nationwide. All right, that's not Arizona, not just New Mexico, that's nationwide. Now, I want to make sure it's clear that I'm saying reported incidents. I made a similar presentation for the Utah Association of Counties last week and focused on state and local governments. And there was one reported incident of a ransomware attack at a county in Utah, and the IT directors in the audience turned left and right, and I said, mind you, I said reported. And they said, oh, well, that makes sense. Because there were other incidents that, for whatever reason, were not publicly reported. If we focus on the state here, since 2016, 13 reported various incidents. Again, yellow is ransomware, purple breach, blue phishing. Anybody not know what a phishing exercise is, for sake of argument? So a phishing exercise is it's either phishing broadly, dear customer, your account is on hold. Please click here to continue, and they're attempting to get credentials from you. A spear phishing attack would be, dear Ms. Sensman, your account is been affected. Please click here. Right? They know you in this instance versus they know 10 million by dear customer. But the troubling thing is the ransomware, because it's relatively inexpensive. If I'm a bad guy, I can send out 20 million emails. And if I get 0.1% of a response rate, that's not a bad payday. I don't have to own a data center. I don't have to buy a data center. I don't have to buy very much hardware in order to hold your data ransom, because I'm using your infrastructure. I'm using your computing facilities to hold your data ransom. And I don't know that the data is valuable to me, but I do know that it's valuable to you, right? And the use of your systems is also valuable. And so the problem that we highlight with almost any organization is the number of devices. Raise your hand if you have more than one device that can connect to the internet with you right now, okay, right? If you have more than two, right, from that level. And so the idea is that, gosh, the most secure computer in the world is the one that's not turned on and you can't actually get to it. It's useless, but boy, it's really secure. The most useful computer in the world is the one that has almost no security on it, and it'll be compromised within moments, but boy, it's useful up until that point in time. So somewhere along that continuum is where you want to be. And depending on the goals of the educational institution, promoting educational resources, but protecting students' information, promoting connectivity and learning, but protecting parents' information, right? Somewhere along that continuum is where we have to reside. But your IT organizations, whether they're in-house in the charter school systems or whether they're contracted, they have to deal with both the school's environment as well as the connected environment of people bringing their own systems on, right? And so the problem is that the network is very dynamic. The threats outside the network are dynamic, and what are called vulnerabilities. A vulnerability is essentially a weakness in or an unexpected behavior of a piece of networking equipment or in a web-based application. So as an example, let's say there's a vulnerability in a piece of Microsoft software, not to pick on Microsoft, but they have a lot of software out there, that allows for a certain behavior to occur that Microsoft didn't intend. So that could be a vulnerability. There's numerous vulnerabilities that are known, but nobody has yet figured out a way to take advantage of. And so what we're helping do in a proactive manner is essentially address these issues. In our database of information of our customer systems, on average, we're finding what are called 7 critical vulnerabilities per thing attached to the network. And so that's a desktop computer, a server, an environmental control system, your video conferencing system. If it's connected to the IP network, on average, we're finding 7 critical vulnerabilities per device. So if you have a school, let's say the average population is, I understand, around 600 students. Is that fair?
We can use that.
Not much larger than that, right? You have students, they have devices. You have administrative, you have staff, they have devices. Probably around 850. So let's say it's 800 for my math skills. And 7, so then I'm at 5,600 vulnerabilities in an environment. How many IT technicians are there? Not a lot, typically, or they're maybe outsourced, right? And so the problem, though, isn't that 5,600. Let's talk about this real quick, and this isn't to be pedantic, but it's want to know what the vulnerability is. Here it is, and you all have the presentation. An exploit is something that can take advantage of the vulnerability, a piece of malware, a virus, something that somebody has written, right? When vulnerabilities come into contact with exploits, or vice versa rather, that's where you can start developing a risk model and understanding, all right, if I have a vulnerability on my system and a threat that's outside the environment comes into contact with the vulnerability, what is the potential for loss? And that's what we try to help the clients understand. Typically, there's something called vulnerability scanning. In vulnerability scanning, it's simply looking at all of the devices on the environment and determining what are the vulnerabilities. And you're using automated systems to do this and to catalog it. And it has to be automated because of the volume of computers on networks and then the volumes of vulnerabilities. Gather that information, prepare the data, and then prioritize it so that you know what to go after first in terms of what to remediate, if possible. The remediation should be continuous, and then creating and distributing reports. That could be up to anywhere from a 4 to 6 week process that's ongoing, that should be ongoing, if it's happening at all. I'll put it that way. I don't know that there are a line of IT-focused people who are lining up at each of the schools waiting for jobs to open up. The reverse is true. There's probably a line of openings waiting for IT-centric folks to fill those jobs, okay? So more people isn't an answer because there aren't right now more people. There is a dearth of openings available and not enough people to fill them. So now let's look at the numbers. This is a snapshot of the National Vulnerability Database. It is a thing, and it exists. And in that database, by the way, there aren't an infinite number of vulnerabilities. there are, at the date of this slide, 132,814. Certainly a finite number. Okay. Of those vulnerabilities that somebody has developed a weapon against, an exploit, a virus, something along those lines, only 24,172, a much smaller number. So it's not to say you ignore the balance, it's that the balance doesn't matter right now. What matters right now is if you stop here, there's 24,000. That's still a big number, okay? Those that are what are called capable of remote code execution, a bad guy being able to remotely manage a piece of software in your network. Of those, there are 4,000 vulnerabilities roughly that have malware that's capable of remote code execution. Make sense? Okay. And on the day this snapshot was taken, on the 7th of November, there were 117 of these vulnerabilities trending in the wild. The point is that the problem isn't the 132,000. The problem is the 117. If you have 100 these in your environment, these are the ones to focus on. But this is the landscape of all of the vulnerabilities that are in existence, right? At least within the U.S. that are cataloged, okay? This is an example of one of our clients. It's in a government entity. I'll say it's not in the states that begin with a letter other than A. In this particular entity has 17,500 devices, things connected to the IP network. In this organization, there are 603,000 vulnerabilities. But wait, isn't that larger than the previous slide? Yeah, but these aren't unique, right? There's a number of repetitions. There's a number of duplicate vulnerabilities. So you could have 10 machines that are configured the same way, and they all have the same vulnerability. That's counted in here. And then we've divided them into high, medium, and low severity. Of those, 35,000 have been weaponized across 6,500 devices. And again, servers, video conferencing systems, whatever. Of those, 1,883 are capable of remote code execution across 629. Now we're getting into more manageable. And of those, on this particular day, 5 were trending. Again, not to ignore everything to the left of the circle, but to be able to point out and say, here's the 5 you focus on today. The others, let's figure out the budget, let's figure out what resources are needed, et cetera, and continue working the remediation and fixing the problems. Essentially, what we're here to help out with is the unknown. So whether we're looking, whether people in our industry are looking, whether nobody's looking, these vulnerabilities exist. And it's best to know, right, what to do about them and how to fix them. And so if you divide the scope of the problem from finding the vulnerabilities to fixing the vulnerabilities into 4 steps, finding them, correlating them with known threats so you understand the risk, developing the remediation guidance, and finally remediating, we take care of the first 3 of those, leaving the remediation to either the client or another third party. You don't want us fixing the problem, right? It's also like your independent auditor coming in and doing an audit of your financials and then adjusting the books based on their findings. You want a separation between those who found the problem and those who are fixing the problem so that you have some validity and resilience to the information that's being provided. We've reduced this down to a security score. It's a 3-digit credit-like scoring model. There's a cease and desist letter that says I can't say FICO-like scoring model. So it's a credit-like scoring model. 300 to 850 is the range. And essentially, the higher the number, the better off the environment, the device is, or the environment is relative. The state of Arizona is one of our clients. And we've been working with the state for a number of years now. And we work with AZDOA and AZ Department of Economic Security as the primary contacts. And they tell us to go out and do penetration testing, to pull this information and to provide this data so that the state has an idea of its security posture. Here's an example of the case study. On average, when we started the effort, the average score for the state of Arizona was 668. Each of the circles there at the time represented an agency within the state of Arizona. So we were collecting data on roughly 61,000 computing devices across the state's network with an average score of 668. On the far left, towards the red side, is worse. on the far right is better. What the state did was they had a concerted effort over 18 months to make sure that the lower performing agencies were teamed up with the higher performing agencies to exchange best practices and understand what works, what doesn't work. After that 18 months, now the groupings are better. We went from 125 entities down to 87, but we went from 61,000 assets up to 110,000. So what they did is they consolidated some things, removed some entities that didn't make sense in this context, and shifted the entire group to the right. So that now the average at the time this snapshot was taken was 781, with continual goals to continue to move forward. And if you're thinking about this, right, you'll get a better interest rate with this type of score than you would with this type of score from that perspective. But from a security perspective, these agencies are better off 18 months later collectively and individually than they were prior. Finally, we have the ability, the customer has the ability, if the organization, and here's the question that I have that we can probably get into a little bit later, but there are 500 plus charter schools, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm making an assumption that they're not connected to each other in a network setting, right?
Correct.
If there is a common way to look at them, this might be a picture of what charter schools look like in terms of their scoring, right, underneath this vulnerability management program. There's a variety of ways to do it. We work with clients who have disparate networks and still pull the data together, and we have clients where from a single point you can see the entire geographically dispersed network. So it just depends on the situation. But here, very quickly, these are just examples of business units that have been divided in a particular organization as to how that information is being shown. One of the other, and then there's some additional information. You have the entire slide deck. What I want to talk about briefly, if I have another few moments,
Please.
is the behaviors. Oftentimes, the ransomware comes in via email, okay, and it's hopefully people are inadvertently versus intentionally going out and opening the emails that have but they're designed to be opened, right? Here's a copy of the invoice I sent you. Here's a copy of the check we're sending you. Something to pique my interest as an end user, right? And to be able to then follow through. Ransomware can be very insidious. When we're called to say, and a customer or potential customer, or somebody just says, we're having a problem with ransomware, can you help us? If it's a technical person calling me from the IT staff, I'll ask, how are your backups? Because the point is can you restore from a credible backup, right? If it's a non-technical person, that's the third question I ask. The first two is, have you talked to your attorney? And have you contacted your insurance company? Because there can be insurance coverage to help in the recovery, not necessarily the restoration. If the answer to the question, how are your backups? Well, either they've been affected or they don't exist or we don't know. Then it's really it's a recovery process and a rebuilding process versus restoring data because of the way ransomware works. And then the question comes up, is it worthwhile to pay the ransom? Well, it depends, honestly. The city of Atlanta, when they were hit in 2017, the ransom request was $30,000. And for whatever reason, some time passed before they made a decision. And by the time they made the decision, there was nobody there to pay the ransom to. The website was not there. There wasn't the Bitcoin wallet. It just didn't exist. Whether it ever existed is a different question. But now a $30,000 fee to hopefully get a password turned into about a $20-some-odd million recovery effort to replace computers, to go through the restore process, et cetera. There's a variety of instances on where paying the ransom worked and passwords were collected. Because, gosh, if you're a bad guy and you want a good reputation, you're going to deliver to your customers if they do what they ask you to, right? Then there's a number of instances where it didn't work, where the money was paid and it's gone to an anonymous cryptocurrency wallet and there's no password coming. And so it really is it really is a crapshoot in terms of how whether paying the ransom will get you your password to unlock your systems. And then finally, the FBI does collect passwords from ransomware attacks, and they maintain a list. And if there is a ransomware attack, it's often not a bad idea to try passwords that the FBI may have access to determine if they'll work. But given how easy it is to change passwords, new variations of ransomware, the likelihood that a password that the FBI has would work is probably low. Are there questions that I can address at this time?
Board members, are there any questions? Yeah, please, Superintendent.
Good morning. I had just a couple of questions. Recently we've had charter schools mention that they've had some sort of breach, and so then they're telling us that that they didn't get the emails, or they're telling us that they've had technology issues due to some sort of breach. So how, as a board, how can we know if that's a valid issue? Because sometimes we don't know, because I'm not looking at their computer,
Sure.
if that's a valid issue. So is there a way we could be informed or?
So if the question is are you getting a legitimate question from a charter school, right? You're getting a response saying, gosh, we didn't get this. One of the easiest ways is to pick up a phone and talk to a person, right, that should be answering the phone. My own company has received emails that looks like it's coming from our CEO requesting a wire transfer for a certain purpose. And if the communication had just been all through email, $20,000 would have left for an illegitimate purpose. But what stopped it was the recipient of that email that was allegedly from the CEO calling the actual CEO and saying, Srinivas, did you just send me an email requesting? And the answer was no, right? So often that common sense communication and outreach, because if it seems out of the ordinary, it may very well be out of the ordinary. There was a nonprofit in Albuquerque that was moving money from one IRA account to another, two different financial institutions. And somehow, bad guy got in the midst of the email chain and intercepted wiring instructions. And the end result was the sending bank sent money to the incorrect recipient bank. And the only thing that stopped it was an intermediary bank noticed that the transmittal information was wrong. But it was $850,000 that was locked up for 12 weeks while they cleared the issues. The nonprofit got the money back, but it wasn't a big organization, and this was a lot of money to be in limbo.
I guess just a follow-up, is there ever a way that the affected entity could provide us with documentation to show, like, look, I've had this breach or malware issue, so that we have documentation to say, oh, I can see you've been having this trouble?
They can take screenshots of what they're seeing. There should also be, there are groups, and I can talk offline about this, but there are groups, not us, but there are organizations that are very good at the incident response that possibly this board should have access to be able to form an incident response plan for the charter schools. Because I know that they're smaller entities, and the IT support is probably small, right? And so possibly if there's a way to provide at least, not necessarily on retainer, but access to incident response companies that can help. But the bottom line is that these things can't easily happen with vulnerabilities being in existence. And so if the vulnerabilities are addressed, right, then it becomes more of a non-issue. Because if a piece of malware comes into a network, but there's not a vulnerability for it to act upon, it won't do anything. Okay, it'll not work. And so the preventive side is typically much less expensive than the reactive side.
One more question.
Please.
So I know cybersecurity is kind of a hot topic. We're trying to support especially our high school students who are interested in this area. And I was just curious if there are internship opportunities for high school students in Arizona.
So are there internship opportunities for high school students in Arizona? I'm going to assume yes. And the reason I look
encourage it.
around is we have internship opportunities in Albuquerque, but your question is is Arizona, so I get that. And I believe there are. I know that AZDOA is actually wanting to engage an entity to determine what their teaching capability is, so that to produce essentially a pipeline of interns then into employees. And I believe it's Embry-Riddle University, so if I'm not
great.
mistaken.
Maybe I can help you with this.
Please, absolutely.
So you probably know both Arizona State and GCU have some pretty significant programs that they've just begun in the last few years. I've actually had a tour of the GCU one. It's pretty amazing where that's going. I think you're going to see more of that. It's going to be important too, because you have coding academies that exist now, things that weren't there before. The hard thing is you have to get that real world experience because the environment changes constantly. So as you're learning, the environment is completely changed by the time you get out with your degree and what you're going to do. So I know those schools do work on placements for folks that are, students that are in that environment and want to go do that, because they can't function, I think, without having that internship tied to it. And typically, because there's a limitation of the amount of people available for these jobs, they're typically going to get hired because of the demand that still exists in that environment. But Arizona, from a university side, actually is pretty aggressive in this space.
Yeah, and I would just share that I know they're getting more aggressive about it at the high school level too. So I just want to make sure that we just want to get them in young and make sure they have those opportunities. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for the presentation too. I know I'm very lucky to have a great IT team here in the Department of Ed, and but we get the phishing emails and I see them coming in. So I just wanted to say thank you for this work and presentation.
Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Fidel, Mr. DiMaria, thank you so much for your, and you beat the buzzer. Wow. So kudos. Kudos.
That's a first for me.
Knowing you as long as I have, that is a true
Yes,
statement.
that's true.
But thank you for bringing this to our board to share some more information about what's happening out in the world, and the penny wise and pound full, to get on the front end of dealing with these problems.
And you have Mark's information if anyone wants to reach out to Mark about kind of what they're doing and how it works here in Arizona. He's happy to do that. So,
Excellent. Thank you
you for the
both very
time.
much for being here.
President Senseman?
Yes.
Do we have any sort of standards for the charter operators on technology, how they're supposed to maintain technology, whether they're compliant? Do they require any kind of testing, penetration testing, or anything like that? Do we know?
No, I don't believe that we do, and I think that's, as they're all private businesses, we kind of allow them to run in the manner that they feel is best for their business.
Well, seeing as though they're funded with state dollars, I think this is something we should probably look into. And I don't know, maybe ask the Charter Association to tell us if they're giving them any kind of guidance, and to hear from the Charter Association on what they're doing. Because this is actually, if you're talking about the impact, if a school is not prepared and the confidential data that they have and the, their ability to make payroll, if their, systems get locked, all those kinds of things I think are critically important. And they're in my business, they're very important. We deal with them, and I think we should hear some more about this at some point.
Absolutely. Joanna, perhaps if you could have staff reach out to the association and kind of get a better idea of what's happening in that space and what we might be able to do to provide resources or best practices or, that sort of thing from the board perspective. I agree. We should, let's get our arms around it and take a look at it, because I think that we're only going to see more of this. We've already had a charter school, impacted by it. We had an entire school district up north that was in a world of hurt, when this happened. And so I think it would be good for us to be, educating and talking about this issue more. And like I said, when I talked to Mr. DiMaria, it was this really enlightening conversation of how much is happening out there in the world and what the vulnerabilities are, and making sure that, as we are all so busy with talking about education and that sort of thing, that we don't miss some of these other really important and valuable tools to have as you're running a school. So that way you don't you don't end up getting your audit hijacked with the ransomware like we had in the past. So thank you guys both, or all of you gentlemen, for being here to be a part of this. We very much appreciate your time. Excellent. All right, moving on. Madam Superintendent, whatever your report, please.
Thank you. And Joanne, I was wondering if you could pull up the Department of Ed website for me. Sorry, I didn't ask ahead of time. Is that possible? Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Good morning, board members, Madam President. Before I share some of the updates we have in the Department of Ed, first want to recognize that this month is Native American Heritage Month, and today's meeting takes place on the traditional lands of the O'odham, Yavapai, and Hohokam people. And we are grateful for their past and present contributions to our community. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Get Set for STEM, and that's why I wanted to pull up the website. And so in nearly every school I visited across the state, one of the trends I hear is we're still looking for science and math teachers. Everywhere I go, I just hear the demand for having highly effective, highly trained teachers in the STEM areas. And as a result, the legislature was gracious in allocating scholarship funding, and I'm going to hopefully be able to show you what we've been doing with this. Yeah, just azed.gov. We are working on getting a new website too in the near future. But I wanted to share about this scholarship. So we recently rebranded this. We're now calling this Get Set for STEM. And Get Set for STEM, the SET is an acronym for Scholarships for Effective Teachers. And this program offers Arizona teachers, currently certified kindergarten through 12th grade Arizona certified teachers, to expand their STEM teaching and knowledge. And hopefully we can show you. So for example, if you have a current teacher, whether they try typing in like www.azia.gov maybe. There you go. And there it is, Get Set for STEM. So right there on the home page, if you could just scroll down a little bit, it's that right there. So click there, but you can all see it. So it's scholarships for effective teachers. So this could be a kindergarten teacher, this could be a high school physics teacher, it could be a special education teacher, any currently certified K-12 Arizona teacher who wants to take advanced coursework in STEM or CTE fields. They can get up to $2,000 per year. And so all they have to do is submit an application outlining the coursework that they intend to take and the STEM area or CTE certificate that they would like to add to their teaching certificate. And the teachers who get these scholarships, they are committing to teach in Arizona public schools for 3 years after completing their coursework. So on this website, we tried to break down some more information for people who are interested. So the scholarships can be used at any Arizona institution, so ASU, NAU, community colleges. This can also be used for not just credits, not just for accredited classes, but could also be used for like a workshop or other types of trainings that the universities might provide. But we wanted to make sure that teachers are aware of this. Please tell your teachers if they want to take advanced coursework in any STEM or CTE field. We're really trying to get the word out about these scholarships, and they can apply for multiple years of funding. So they can get $2,000 this year, $2,000 next year. They could use this money to get a master's degree. So we really want to spread the word that this is an amazing opportunity for Arizona teachers, and we're hoping will also help retain our teachers in Arizona. Moving on, just wanted to announce that we recently held an event, which was the first Arizona Teacher Table. We worked with the Council of Chief State School Officers, or CCSSO, to organize this event, and we welcomed educators from across Arizona to meet with our team and to talk about best practices and innovative strategies for recruiting and retaining teachers in our state. And we were thrilled to have strong representation there from charter school educators at the teacher table, including Vice President Mary Ellen Lee. So thank you for joining us there. And at the teacher table, we also announce there that we recently hired a new director for educator recruitment and retention in the department, and that is Steve Larson. So we're really excited to continuing the work in the areas of educator recruitment and retention. As we know, this is a huge priority to making sure that we have high academic success in Arizona. One of my more recent charter school visits was at the end of October. I had the opportunity to visit Odyssey Prep Academy in Buckeye. It was a great visit. I loved seeing the students were very active in their PE classes, and they offered Spanish and music classes there as well. I just think it's such a great opportunity to allow students to have bilingual opportunities in our schools, and wanted to quickly thank Holly and Megan, who are the co-directors of the Odyssey Prep Schools, for inviting me to visit their school. And the last thing I'll mention is, and this is not in my notes, because last night we had our first ever Student Advisory Council meeting. It was phenomenal. I am just so impressed and blown away by what our students are capable of and the discussions that we held. So this advisory council is made up of students from 5th through 12th grade, and they're from all over the state of Arizona. We had students who drove from Douglas, Prescott, Winslow, just such a great group of students, and they brought up issues around some of the issues they were most passionate about included mental health and also standardized testing. So we had a lot of great, robust conversations. They talked about also transportation needs and funding, their teachers, but yeah, the hot topics were mental health and testing. So I'm going to be meeting with them twice more during this school year, and we're looking for ways to continue to elevate their voices, and so they can have a role in advocating for education policies at the state level. And that concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Next up, call to the public. We have 3. We'll start with Megan Hines. And if you could state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Megan Hines.
Welcome.
Good morning, Superintendent Huffman, Board Chair Senseman, and members of the board. My name is Megan Hines. I'm the Director of Counseling Services at Arizona Connections Academy, and I'm here to provide public comment on item J of your agenda today. As I reviewed in your board comment, Arizona Connections Academy public comment is part of the record, so I just want to highlight a few items for your consideration. Annually, ACA meets our enrollment cap of 2,500 students and would like the ability to serve additional students who are waitlisted. In addition, we want to stay compliant with this board's rules and regulations, which is why we would like to submit a request to serve our waitlisted students. Arizona Connections Academy was recently identified as a comprehensive support and improvement school, as our 4-year graduation rate is below ESSA requirements of 67%, which is the only reason for inclusion in comprehensive support and improvement. Our graduation rates are increasing annually. From 2017 to 2019, Arizona Connections Academy graduation rate increased 10 percentage points from 42.63% to 52.79%. We are continuing to see improvements for our students. As we stated in our public comment, we are working with the Arizona Department of Education on tracking our students. As you may be aware, as a virtual school, Arizona Connections Academy serves a unique population. Students come to our schools for specific reasons, and many are only planning to be enrolled for a short time. Many high school students enroll late, behind in credits, with a history of poor school performance. Arizona Connections Academy has a high mobility rate in our high school population. Many choose to attend for a semester or a year and then withdraw prior to their senior year. While we take responsibility for tracking our students, our numbers of withdrawals are significantly high and thus have a significant impact on the graduation rate. Based on an analysis of students that were classified as non-graduates but had withdrawn from ACA prior to the end of their senior year, we estimate the impact of these withdrawals as follows. For the class of 2018, the graduation rate from 49.21% to at least 63.51%, to up to 69.12%, a 14 to 20% point impact. For the class of 2019, the graduation rate from 52.79% to at least 65 to 71.23%, which would be a 12 to 19 percentage point impact. Arizona Connections Academy supports staff's recommendation to remove the school improvement designation measure from the eligibility criteria for expansion requests. We would like the opportunity to present our expansion request to the Charter Authority, as our most recent letter grade received was a B, and we would like to tell you how students are well served academically by Arizona Connections Academy.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Sue Durkin.
Good morning, President Senseman, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. My name is Sue Durkin, and I'm the president-elect of the Arizona Alternative Education Consortium. The consortium submitted its letter of support for the proposed revisions to the academic performance eligibility criteria in our letter dated November 6th. The recently released grades bear out that On Track to Graduate is indeed an appropriate indicator to assist the determination of this eligibility. We in the consortium were aware that graduation rate would be an issue a couple of years ago, and we began conversations with the ADE accordingly. When you see fit, the consortium is eager for further discussion regarding the appropriateness of federal accountability for alternative schools, and I just want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for considering this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Durkin.
And I'll keep it short because I know you have a really busy agenda today. So.
Thank you very much. Next up, former State Senator Catherine Miranda. Welcome.
Good morning. President, Superintendent Hoffman, members, thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. Now, who would have thought I would ever be in front of a charter board advocating for a charter school in my district? Just a little history about me is former state senator in our state legislature. The past year, completely resting, regrouping, recharging, refining. Former ranking member in Education Committee, and always trying to bring both sides together, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, whether it's charter schools, public schools. There's always some commonality that I'm seeking. And today I'm going to give you an example of how I appreciate both sides. In my district, we have an academy called Paideia Academy. And I have watched Paideia from the first time the shovel hit the ground, to the ribbon cutting, to the families calling me, texting me, meeting with them, and expressing how thankful they are with Paideia. Dr. Windsor and his administrative staff, his staff has done phenomenal things with Paideia, and I have followed it closely. In the legislature, because of Paideia, I advocate for good schools because all of our kids belong to all of us, no matter what side. So I'm going to continue to advocate for good schools on both sides, but today I can't stress enough how important it is for an expansion, a new site at Paideia, and the enrollment cap increase that I am asking for today. As you know, the Loop 202 has just come in. I live just a few blocks from that new freeway. We're going to inherit 30,000 plus homes, probably 3 or 4 people in that home, which are students. And from history, we always ask for expansion way back, and by the time it's approved, it's time for expansion again. I think Dr. Windsor and his staff are right on time with the ask because of the Loop 202 and the increase of families and this expansion of a high school. So thank you for your time, and please, I ask for your yes vote for the new site, grade expansion, and the enrollment cap increase. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. All right. That concludes our calls to the public. Those are all the slips that I received. Next up, we have agenda item G, which is the consent agenda. Anyone wishing to take anything off the consent agenda? If not, if there's a motion, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? We'll go with Justin on that one. Alexis, if you could call the roll, please.
Vice President Lee,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Close,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff,
Aye.
President Sensman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next up, you did the agenda for 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, item H, charter amendments. We'll start with H1, Eagle College Prep, Maryville.
President Senseman, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. Eagle College Prep Maryvale, LLC, has submitted a new school amendment request to add Eagle College Prep Glendale to its charter. The new school will be located in Glendale, serve students in grades K through 8, and open in fiscal year 2021. In conjunction with the new school amendment request, the charter holder has requested to increase its enrollment cap from 450 to 650. The charter holder does not meet the staff recommendation criteria because Eagle College Prep Maryvale does not perform at or above the average performance of nearby schools in ELA. Additionally, the charter holder was identified for targeted school improvement by the Arizona Department of Education in fiscal year 2018 for the subgroup of students with disabilities. Therefore, this additional data has been included in the executive summary for review.
Excellent. Are there any questions for staff before we ask for someone? Is there someone from Eagle College Prep here? If you could come up and state your name and if you have anything to share about this item.
I'm Steve Inman, Charter Representative for Eagle College Prep Maryville. President Sensman, Vice President Lee, Superintendent Hoffman, and members of the board, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to visit with you about our request for a new school amendment for Eagle College Prep Maryville for the new school of Eagle Glendale. I also want to extend my gratitude to board staff for all of the work that they have done to review and assemble the package. Before I speak to Eagle Maryville's data specifically, which was just mentioned, I want to provide you with a little bit of context behind who Eagle is. We are focused on 3 pillars: excellent academics, character formation, and community involvement, with a mission to make this education accessible and affordable to all. EAGLE is an acronym that stands for Expecting Academic Greatness with a Loving Emphasis. And that means that we meet every scholar where they are and push them to meet their fullest potential as citizens in our community. We're heavily focused on student growth and progress so that we will help to meet them with their, and I would like to share some additional data points here. Eagle Maryville's percent passing on the AZ Merit, ELA, and math continues to be an area of high focus for us. As noted by board staff, our application for charter amendment for the new school was not included on the consent agenda due to the existing schools' ELA and math proficiency performance as it compares to those schools within a 5-mile radius of the existing site and the proposed site. Board staff used the percent of students passing the most recent AZ Merit test in both ELA and math respectively for this evaluation. We are making progress, and I would like to highlight that this data point, the percent passing, does not tell the complete picture as designed by the State Board of Education's State A through F letter grade framework to evaluate academic performance. First, for the past 3 years, Eagle Maryville's growth points have been strong enough to yield a letter grade B for 3 consecutive years. For each of those years, we have received over 80% of the available growth points. While our percent passing is not where we want it to be, this shows that we are making progress towards proficiency. Secondly, the breakdown of the full academic year stability proficiency in the State Board of Education's A through F letter grade framework shows that students that have been with us for at least 3 years perform over 7 percentage points better than those that are with us for just 1 year. While our percent passing is not where we want it to be, as students stay with us and learn our programs, they are making progress academically. Third, for the subgroup of English language learners on the State Board of Education's A through F letter grade criterion, which includes over 30% of our student population. So we currently serve over 30% EL learners at our school. We received 5 out of 5 proficiency points and 5 out of 5 growth points in the state A through F letter grade framework. Our English language learners are being served well at our school. Also, approximately 85% of our students at our existing site come from a residence within 2 miles of the school. We feel that this is therefore more representative of the overall demographics. Charter board staff needs to have some criterion in which to use, and so they use 5 miles, but sometimes those can vary somewhat wildly. So we feel like because a lot of the students come from 85%, it would be important to compare that. And in an area bounded by 2 miles to the north, 2 miles to the south, 2 to the west, and 2 to the east, Eagle Maryville is in the top third of elementary schools receiving a state letter grade A or B. Returning to AZ Merritt itself, when comparing percent passing scores for schools within 2 miles of Eagle Maryville, we are within 1 percentage point of the area average passing in ELA and better than the average area in math by 7 percentage points. Within these boundaries, the school's percent passing was nearly double the next closest school in the area. When we remove this outlier, Eagle Maryville's percent passing is actually higher than the average percent passing in the area. I also want to acknowledge that we are aware that there are more A and B schools within a 5-mile radius of the proposed site. However, we believe the Eagle targeted area of the site will benefit from Eagle's offering. The area bounded within the 2 by 2 square mile that we had mentioned earlier, 43% of the schools are a C, D, or F. We believe that we can be very competitive, particularly serving schools with a higher percentage of free and reduced lunch. Our percentage of free and reduced lunch at our existing school is over 90%. And we believe that we can do a great job serving English language learners in these areas. As mentioned, nearly a third of our population is as such now. With a program focused on personalized instruction that has shown strong growth and proficiency over the past 3 years, allowing us to become a B school consistently, we feel that our academic program will be successful in the new area. Moreover, not measured in the academic data is our strong focus on curricular resources and organizational resources focused on character formation that augment our educational offering for families and students alike. Thank you for your time, and I'm available for any additional questions you may have.
Board members, are there questions?
Yes, President Sensman.
Please.
Okay. Hi. Good morning. So I just had one quick question about what your comment about the 2 mile radius. How many schools then are within the 2 mile radius that you calculated your percentages off of?
I don't recall that number specifically.
Do you have like a guesstimate?
30.
It's approximately 30.
30.
Yeah,
Thank
approximately 30. Yeah.
Okay. And
And
then
so within that 30, we're in the top third of those 30
Okay. So then,
from ABC.
sure. So then my question about growth, and from my, I think fairly good, but maybe limited understanding of how school letter grades are calculated. The growth score, you can receive 100% of the growth score just for getting targeted growth, meaning expected growth. You don't have to go above, but you can't go below, right? So to get 100% of your growth points, you need to have what we would consider, what the state would consider expected growth, right? So my issue maybe is that what we're seeing is so you have about 80% of the expected growth points that you guys received.
Of the total growth
of the
points
total,
available.
right, 40 out of 50, right? And so comparing that though then to what we're seeing in FY18 versus FY19 as far as where is your proficiency going, right? So in FY18 you're at 32% for ELA, but then we see a drop in 27%. In math, we have 38 for FY15, and we see a drop to 37%. And then for science, in FY18, we have a drop from 53% to 42%, right? So I think there's two ways of looking at growth, right? You can see what the state says, which is, okay, are you hitting what we expect you to hit? And you're hitting that 80% of what they expect you to hit. But then we have this other piece of growth that I think is super important, where we're evaluating where's a school going, where is their focus on academics, and we have fairly significant decrease, especially in science, which is concerning. So I'm just curious, kind of, what is your plan? Why is there a decrease in growth, right? So from that calculation. So why is that decrease? What's the plan for that? So maybe that's a lot of questions, so I'll stop there and then
So
kind of.
would it be okay if I introduce?
Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know who wants to fill the question. So Yesenia Fitzhugh, for the record, is the principal of Eagle Maryvale. So she is the principal of the existing school.
Perfect.
Thank you. Since 2014, when we opened the school, our SPED population also has increased. So there's accountability in the SPED population over the years with our highest growth that occurred last year. So we are addressing and noting that we have also, from TSI, have moved to increase our percent passing, and so in which we did receive the 2 bonus points for the state letter grade. So we believe we are growing in that sense in terms of our specific subgroup.
This is Lisa Fantasia, Principal Director for Eagle School.
Hello. I think additionally, some of what we're seeing as we look year over year is because this has been a growing campus, they are adding new students every year. And so every year they have a larger percentage of new students as they're adding grade levels, which also has impacted the proficiency, because what we have seen is as students stay with us longer, they're showing higher percentages of growth in proficiency.
So I guess follow-up would then be, you're about to receive a school that's 100% new students. You know, we don't want to expect to see 27, 37, and 42% proficiency. So what are you doing to address the new students then? Because if that's the reason why it's decreasing in proficiency, then you're about to be, right, given
Correct.
a school with 100% new students. So what's the goal? What are you setting in place now to address that?
So beginning last year and into this year, we have done a couple of things. One, we have introduced instructional rounds. So we are bringing administrators in from all of our campuses to do classroom observations and to help create some problem protocols and solutions addressed specifically to those. Based on what we have found from our instructional rounds last year, what we have found is we need really specific focus on learning targets and success criteria to drive teacher instruction so that lessons are aligned from objective to assessment. So we have actually brought in Dr. Francis and Jane Smoody's team have come in, and they are working side by side with our leadership to help us both problem solve and plan additional PDs for our teachers. They are also coming in alongside of us to do observations so that we're creating real-time plans for adjustment and assessment.
Where's the location of the new school? I know it's in the packet. I just can't find it quickly. Where's the location?
So it's approximately 59th Avenue and Peoria Avenue.
And is that the same demographic? Is that the closest demographic to, because you have 4 schools within your network, if I'm reading this correctly.
That's correct.
Is that closer than, like, because you have like a South Mountain school that I would think would be closer demographically, or did you just choose that school because it has the B rating? Like, it's fine if you did. I'm just wondering what the demographics are.
Yeah, the demographics of it are probably somewhere, well, actually, that's not probably. They are in between the Maryvale School and the South Mountain School, but the area that we're targeting is to the south of the location. So Peoria is north of where the existing school is. We wanted to have a little bit of an overlap from branding strength as we move into a new community, and that area is a higher percentage FRL and more diverse.
Additionally, part of the reason we chose this school to replicate was because we actually have had community members from that area talking with the leaders at that campus requesting some additional sites in the Glendale, Phoenix area.
So maybe I'll just kind of tell the board where I'm at. So I'm just concerned because the 2 schools demographically, I believe, that match, so South Mountain being one of them, both show that decrease in achievement, right? So your South Mountain school is a C school, Your Maryvale school is awesome. It's a B school, which is great. Congratulations on that. But both of them are showing this decrease from FY18 to FY19. And then when we look at your growth, growth is, I think, so important and so great. But again, you're hitting 80% of what we expect you to hit for growth, right? According to your school model. So that isn't strong enough for me to say you're going above and beyond when it comes to growth, if that's your area of focus. So I guess that's just kind of, so this is a tough one for me. So I don't know where everybody else is at or if there's any other questions, but.
No, I would echo your sentiments about that, and just kind of seeing this downward trend. You obviously have one B school, but you have 3 C schools that also show very similar trends to me. And so one of the questions I had for you is that you are not an alternative school, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you not qualify for that, or just a decision not to be an alternative
We've
school?
historically not pursued that, no.
With your population? And then the other problem, or not that alternative is a problem, but the other concern that I had about this was that you are in TSI, obviously for targeted school improvement. And when you're looking at you only have 4% passing, in your SPED populations, out of all of the numbers, that were tested. And so 4% seems shockingly low, and obviously shows that like the trends that we're concerned about are kind of systemic. And so,
this is that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Can I please speak to the performance regarding our TSI and why? Unfortunately, our SPED teacher passed away right before AC Merit, and it did have an effect on our students.
Sure.
And so tell me about the timing of why this works for you now to do this school. Because obviously your grades are going down, like focusing on building a new school when you're trending data that we see and that we use as a kind of a metric is going down. What is the, I guess, why would you want to be adding to your plate right now when your data isn't, really close to where it should be?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. I think one of the reasons that we feel like is we have an outstanding, exceptional leader at Eagle Maryvale, and we went through the very extensive, rigorous process as it relates to the ASIP grant, and were awarded the ASIP grant through that process, talking about the same questions that we've talked about here, talking about the same models that we've talked about here, and we feel like with the supports that are in place, it is an excellent opportunity for us to continue to grow. And we feel like that timing provides us with a good opportunity to start with a stable footing. You will also notice in the packet that we're interested in, while approving K-8, we would start K-3, so that we would start small. You'll also notice in the packet that we're looking to start single sections, so that we have the opportunity to hone that which we are doing collaboratively to make sure that it works for children.
Board members, any thoughts?
President Senseman. I, again, echo all the comments I've heard so far, and you asked all the questions better than I could have. I just also want to add that as I look at the data, and if we're looking at choice, there appears to be a lot of options close by for parents. And I understand your desire to replicate your model, but I also see that, the declining scores really are concerning to me. And then, kind of alleviating some of that is that there is a lot of choice nearby.
Yeah. Members, any other thoughts? If not, Ms. Lee, would you like to try a motion?
Not really. Yeah. I move, based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today, to deny the request to add a new school and increase the enrollment cap of Eagle College Prep Maryvale LLC for the reason of declined student. I don't know how to word.
I would say for below state average.
Below state average student achievement.
Student achievement.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Is there a second to that motion? Second, Mr. Swanson. Alexis, if you can call the roll, please.
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett?
Aye.
Mr. Close?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff?
Aye.
President Sensman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next up, item H2, Empower College Prep.
Good morning, President Sensman, Superintendent Hoffman, and members of the board. Empower College Prep has submitted an amendment request to change the grades served from 3 through 12 to K through 12 and to increase its enrollment cap from 915 to 1,200 for fiscal year 2021. The charter holder is requesting the grade level change to improve academic achievement, as well as to meet the requests of families to have children start at the school earlier. The increased enrollment cap will allow the charter holder to accommodate additional students in the new grades. The charter holder does not meet the staff recommendation criteria because Empower College Prep does not perform at or above the average performance of nearby schools in ELA, and Empower College Prep High School does not perform at or above the average performance of nearby schools in ELA and math. Additionally, the charter holder was identified for targeted school improvement by the Arizona Department of Education in fiscal year 2018 for the subgroup of students with disabilities and English language learners. Therefore, this additional data has been included in the executive summary for review.
Excellent. Are there representatives from Empower School here? Welcome. If you can please come forward, state your name for the record.
Good morning, Madam President, Vice President Lee, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. My name is Brian Holman. I am the Executive Director of Empower College Prep. Should I go on?
Please. Yeah.
Excellent.
Please.
First, thank you for your work ensuring that as Arizona school choice grows, Arizona's families' choices are consistently high-quality choices. As I mentioned, I'm Brian Holman, the Executive Director and Authorized Representative. With me today is Becky Jones, our elementary principal, and also Angela Ike, our Director of Finance and Operations. We believe Empower College Prep is a high-quality choice that is highly valued by the families we serve, that we can best serve these families by beginning in kindergarten instead of third grade. Empower College Prep received its charter to serve grades 4 through 12 in 2012 and opened in August serving grades 4 and 5 with the intent to add one grade each year, culminating in its first graduating class in May of 2020. The following year, Arizona began implementing Move On in reading, which meant students not approaching grade level on the state Ames test would not be able to promote to fourth grade. By starting in fourth grade, we would effectively be preventing these students in greatest need from attending our school. So we amended our charter to serve grades 3 through 12. At that point, we were an A-rated school. In 2017, when letter grades were issued for the first time from AZ Merit, the vast majority of these third graders were minimally proficient in reading. This, combined with the lower achievement of newly enrolled students from surrounding schools, and our oldest students not counting toward our letter grade due to being first-year students in our new high school that was classified as not yet rated, contributed to our school dropping from an A to a D letter grade. We began working closely with Rachel and the staff at Arizona State Board for Charter Schools to increase our performance. Starting younger, specifically in kindergarten rather than third grade, was determined to be an integral piece of that strategy. Although we were not able to add grades K2 that year due to having a D letter grade, the growth we achieved with these students has contributed to both our elementary and high school attaining a B letter grade this year. We are also encouraged by the percent of our first graduating class committed to post-secondary education. While just over half of Arizona high school graduates go to college, and that number is significantly lower for students from low-income communities, more than 60% of our students have completed their FAFSA, personal narrative, and application to a four-year university. About 10% have already received full tuition scholarships. Another 20% are planning to start at a community college, meaning 80% of our first graduating class is committed to post-secondary education. Additionally, our families wish to have their students in one school for K through 12th grade, and they do want it to be a high-quality school. About 70% of our families live within 2 miles of the school. The next closest K-12 option is a zip code away and is a C-rated school. Adding grades K2 to our charter and increasing our enrollment capacity to accommodate these additional students will allow us to begin with students sooner, increase the academic results of our students, and satisfy the wishes of the families in our community. We humbly request the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools to accept this request. We have also reviewed the executive summary and appreciate the opportunity to respond to the concerns shared. I would like to begin with a concern about the ELA performance of the elementary schools relative to nearby schools, if that is agreeable to the board.
Please.
First, we are not satisfied with the percent of students who are currently proficient. We've taken several actions to increase this and are already seeing results from these actions. I do want to provide some context first about the comparison. Of the 35 schools receiving A's or B's, as reflected in the executive summary, only 6 have similar free reduced lunch populations, and only 4 have similar EL populations. That being said, we are working strategically and urgently to close this gap. We've reviewed both the AZ merit data and also our Galileo benchmark data and seen that across the board, across multiple standards, our students are not at grade level. We've used other assessments, specifically the STAR test, to identify how far below grade level they are and realized that additional phonics instruction that is less frequent in upper elementary school is needed. We've purchased Wilson Foundations and Just Words to provide that additional phonics instruction. We also have observed our teachers in classrooms and noticed teachers were defining key literary elements and explaining how to analyze texts, but were not effectively modeling through read-alouds the critical thinking. Students had limited time to apply strategies and grapple with text at their instructional level. We adopted a new curriculum that provides more supplemental material for teachers and developed lesson plans for teachers to use that include scripted modeling. The curriculum provides a more comprehensive approach with teacher supplements to teach comprehension, fluency, vocabulary, phonemic awareness, and phonics. We purchased hundreds of books for classroom libraries and started Accelerated Reader to increase reading at grade level texts. The school used targeted school improvement funds to create lesson plans and internalization guides, including modification for students with special needs and English learners. This has resulted in plans that are consistently higher quality and also freed up coaches and teachers to focus on execution now that the plans exist. The school has reviewed its hiring process to ensure a sample teach is part of every hiring decision. The school has hired a dean of English language acquisition, an additional instructional coach, to accelerate the development of teachers in order to accelerate the learning of students. This has led to a 10% increase in the percent of students projected to be proficient on the first quarter Galileo ELA benchmark, as reflected in the governing board packet at our November 12th school board meeting. But ultimately, the reason our ELA data is so low is the reason we are here. Yes, teacher training, more time with students, and comprehensive curriculum matter. But all the research points to the fact that students really need to be receiving excellent reading instruction during the years we do not even have them, kindergarten through second grade, which is why we're asking to serve these grades.
Thank you for your comments. Board members, questions?
Superintendent? Yes. Or, I don't know why I keep superintendent, sorry. Madam President, yes, I do. Sorry.
You should
I think I've
really
done that
say
twice. Yes, I have some questions. So, thank you so much for being here.
Certainly.
So, what you addressed of what you're implementing, so I'm going to ask a couple of specifics, but then a quick question prior to that is are all of those things you did this year? So this is this year implementation of new processes, procedures, curriculum, et cetera. So it didn't start.
The majority of the things I mentioned are things that are most recent. Some of them started previously. And so, for example, the curriculum piece from 2017, at that point, a lot of our curriculum was teacher created. And when we started, that worked for us. The first 2 years of our school, we were an A-rated school. As we grew and brought in new teachers, the quality of those teachers was diverse. and we learned the hard way that they needed more structured curriculum. So we went to a school-wide curriculum in 2017, Engage New York Reading, and we found that that curriculum was not adequate for our teachers to provide the supplemental materials necessary to the success we wanted. And so we have changed that, and that is more recent.
What do you use now for your curriculum?
Houghton Mifflin, Journeys, and collections in the younger grades.
You do that K-8?
We don't
Or
have K2
3-8.
yet.
Yeah,
We hope to.
hopefully, right? Okay.
We do at 3-8, yes. Okay. And then in math, we do still use Engage New York, which ties into Eureka and our curriculum in high school, which has proven effective for math.
Okay, and you use Galileo or STAR for benchmarking?
We use Galileo for benchmarking, our quarter benchmarks. That tells us our students are below grade level on what standards.
Right.
But in order to figure out what grade level really is the entry point and what grade of standard is really the entry point, we use STAR, yes.
Have you found that your Galileo historically has predicted accurately what your passing rate
About
is going
80%
to be?
accurately, yes.
Okay.
And there's a range. So it's as low as I think about 74% and as high as about 93%.
Okay. So last year you were close to predicted, so you knew your ELA scores were going to be about 20% for passing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Based off of your Galileo data?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just asking because there's mixed results, so I was just wondering
Yeah.
if you were given that live data.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I think we're just in a similar boat of seeing, minus your math, which is an anomaly to me. So I'm curious to see, what you did specifically in math to go from 25% passing to 41% passing, but then in the other areas, so ELA for 3-8 is probably statistically the same. I mean, to go from 20% to 19% to 21% is about staying the same. But then we see this large drop in science, right? So from 46 to 25%.
Sure.
And then if we move to the high school, so again, ELA is about the same. Well, it's a consistent drop, actually. So from 38 to 27 to 25. Math dropped from 38 to 27. And then you have an increase in science from 38 to 42.
Right.
So I'm just curious what...
The factors behind those changes.
Right, and so
Yep.
I understand the K2. So I understand that piece of it, right? So I understand you're saying we're not getting students in K2. They're getting tested first year, third grade. You deal with move on and reading. So I understand that piece of it. So putting aside, assuming that's a separate animal from
Sure.
the high school piece, right? Because
Sure.
as a high school teacher, we always blame elementary, right? Oh, what did they do in junior high? I mean, right? That's our go-to. So, so maybe talk about that,
Sure.
right?
You mentioned high school, you also mentioned science. Can I address the science piece first as a
Yeah.
simpler explanation and then go into the
Absolutely.
details of high school? In science, last year, the elementary school was 3rd through 6th grade, and the state boards approved a change to be 3rd through 8th grade, which is why you see it reflected as 3rd through 8th grade in your executive summary. But the data is from 3rd through 6th grade, which means the only grade that's tested is 4th grade, which again are students who have been in our school for only 1, maybe 2 years, which goes back to the need to start sooner.
And this request is only for K2.
We're only asking you to extend to K2.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was for K2
Well, and an
plus
enrollment
to increase the enrollment for high school, to expand grade level, like how many sections there are
No,
for high school.
We would
Based on
be
your enrollment matrix, it looked
Yeah.
like you were expecting to increase sections in both elementary and high school.
It may be best to address those separately as well. So in terms of, let me answer your question about high school first, as far as the background for it. And then I'm happy to talk about the reason for the enrollment cap increase at all. The primary focus and need, I think, for all of us, in order to get the achievement that we need, is to add K2.
Okay.
Now, that's all we accomplish today. I think that everyone and our families and future students would be very happy. That being said, in terms of high school, again, we're not satisfied with the percent of students who are proficient. As I share the following, I don't mean this is an excuse. I only mean to provide additional context. Of the 18 schools receiving A's or B's, only 2 has similar reduced lunch populations and EL populations. The high school founding principal left mid-year in FY18 due to personal reasons and moved to Washington, D.C. At that point, the school had a 38% pass rate in ELA, 2 points higher than the state. And 68% of students passed the fall Algebra 1 test right before she left. 35 points higher than the state, as reflected on the AZ Merit Portal. The principal who replaced her removed key practices, including summer pre-service training, biweekly staff development, and various other key aspects of the school. The principal has been replaced, and all of these structures have been reinstituted. The school saw an 11-point improvement in ELA proficiency on the first quarter benchmark this year, and a 37-point improvement in math proficiency on the first quarter Galileo benchmark compared to last year, again as reflected in the November 12th school board meeting packet. The data also includes many new students who enroll in the school as freshmen and sophomores because they prefer the smaller school environment to larger high schools in the area. Many of these students are credit deficient, but by their junior year, our students scored just 3 points below the state average in ELA and outperformed the state in Algebra 2 by 13% last year, as reflected in the AZ Merit Portal. This shows the positive impact we are having with students over time, and the reason so many students come to our school after falling behind at other high schools in the area. It also shows we need to start with the students earlier.
Sorry, I'm comfortable with the addition of K2. I agree. I think a school needs to, if you're looking at a K8 especially, a school needs to start with kinder. I think you're hurting yourselves by starting in third grade. I'm not as comfortable with the enrollment cap increase. So when I was looking at the enrollment matrix, I believe your current year is actually 60 students over what your current enrollment is. So am I correct in stating that if we just granted the K2 expansion, you would not need an enrollment cap increase to fill K2? At your projected enrollment. Is that correct? Did that question make sense? I can restate
The question made sense.
Okay.
I think I understood it.
Okay.
What I heard you say was that if we just had granted the K2, we wouldn't need an enrollment cap increase from the 915 because we're currently at our CHAR 55 from November is 735.
Right.
And so that is, I don't think that that's accurate. And the reason is last year we enrolled 240 students over the summer. Currently, we have 120 students in our freshman class, approximately. Unless we want to force those students out, which we don't want to do, those students alone, going through the high school, are projected to have an impact of about 125 more students between now and when they become seniors. And so that 125 students plus the K2, 60 students per grade at capacity, is the reason for the enrollment cap increase.
And you would start with K2. You wouldn't grow into it. You would start
right
with K2.
Yeah.
So I almost think if we're going to give them K2, we have to give them the enrollment.
One thing that I feel like I'm talking against myself here, but transparency, I do appreciate the desire for, as I said at the beginning, the board to seek to build like high quality schools. And this forum is the primary way to do that. And perhaps to ensure that we maintain our growth and have to return, providing a enrollment cap increase that isn't the full 1,200 would perhaps be the most strategic solution.
What would be the minimum enrollment cap increase that you would? I mean, obviously whatever we approve, but what would be? You know, if you're walking away and you're saying, okay, this is what we can get by right now.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with 1,200, and I do agree.
Yeah.
I think there's different thoughts of whether you have to come back or that.
Right.
But I like the idea of having a slow growth model, seeing that.
Right.
Ultimately, only had 285 student growth.
But they only have 700 enrolled right. 700. How many do you have enrolled right now?
735 is our CHAR 55. As we were thinking about this previously, we were thinking that. Let me actually look back at my notes if you don't mind.
If you were to go off the enrollment matrix that was submitted with the amendment, then, because CHAR 55 can be a little bit skewed because of the way they calculate ADM, if you look at the enrollment matrix submitted with the amendment, you're looking at 789 current students.
So that is correct. The 789 is correct.
Based on what they submitted at the time that they submitted the amendment, I think that's likely to be accurate, knowing that there's some calculations in the ADM piece. I would be comfortable assuming that that's likely to be accurate because high school students are often counted as partials.
Oh, because of your seniors. And kinders.
So to me, if you're assuming how many in each grade level K2?
25. So
25 in year one, although
Per grade
the
level.
last time we added a new grade, it was third grade, and that first year, with only adding third grade, there was 35. So we think 25 is pretty conservative. We may have as many as our current third grade is 50 there.
So per each grade level?
Right.
So K1?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, I mean, if we were to say it's at 1060 this year, that would be, I think, satisfactory for us to be able to, at least for a year or two, have our freshmen continue at our school, not be forced out, and have room to start K2 slow and strong, and then come back to return.
To me, we're dealing with such a small, kind of number when we're looking at that and knowing where they can go, that I feel I'm okay with going to the 1,200. I do support. And here's my question I ask everyone. So why did you only start at third grade when you
Yeah.
did this originally? Because that's my
Sure.
question to everyone that doesn't start at kindergarten.
Yeah. So we wanted to start young enough that we could have enough time with our students to get them to college and have a high percentage of kids, 100% of our kids get to college. So that's the reason we didn't start older. We also not want to look at students' families in the eye and say, you're too old for us to serve you. And we believed in the gradual growth model to build a strong culture. And for these reasons, we believed that fifth grade was kind of the point we had enough time with our kids. We wouldn't be telling as many generations of kids, you're too old for us to serve you. And we could start with a small group of students and grow from it. That was the reason that we started with that.
I have a quick question. Just since you mentioned college attainment, what is your college attainment rate?
This is our first graduating class, but we have 80% of students who have indicated progress to college is determined by completion of FAFSA forms, completion of 4 university applications, and scholarships received.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Holman.
Yes, sir.
Kindergarten, full day?
Yes.
Okay. And does that change the way we count, kids with these numbers, with the enrollment cap? Is a kindergartner a full kindergartner, or are they a half a kindergartner?
So in terms of when the state lets us know if a school is over its enrollment cap, they are counting a kindergartner as a half a kindergartner. When we determine whether a building can hold the number of students they are asking for, we look at that full enrollment cap number. So I guess in technical terms, they could double up their kindergarten a little bit and still have a few more kids.
So when the school's saying they need 180,
They really only
enrollment
need
cap,
90 ADM.
They really need 90.
Correct.
And so, but when they're reporting to us that they had 180 kids, the state funds at half. When they report their numbers, that will show as 90?
So if they're kindergartners, if they had 180 kindergartners, they would report them to the state at 180. However, they calculate in there's a metric, there's a system in place to have it.
If they had 200, would they be 20 over the cap, or would they be 80 under the cap?
They'd be under the cap.
So there's a little bit of, the request isn't exactly right for the enrollment cap increase.
We try to view it as pure, but we can't because we can't track that.
Okay, well, my most important question was you're providing full day K.
Right.
And no charge.
Right.
Okay.
I'm comfortable K2, no enrollment cap, I know, so I don't know where the rest of the board is at.
I think we should provide an enrollment cap. Since we're saying we're giving you 3 grade levels. And I would assume that you would probably be, with knowing families and that sort of thing, that you'll be pretty prescribed pretty quickly with that, would be my assumption.
Yes.
So, we can split the difference and not provide the whole amount, but I just think if we're giving grade levels and they're as close as they are, that we should allow them the opportunity to, be able to have the ADM related to what the the grade levels are going to be. So perhaps we just add 150 students, kind of split the difference.
President Sensman,
Ms. Crockett.
I have a question, and I visited Empower, and I was very impressed with the students and the teachers and the entire environment there several years ago. I think it was when you had the 5 through 12. But are you planning to serve the same, and have you been serving the same population of families?
Yes.
Since you've gone down to third. And so my question is, when you were in fifth, you must have had the same issues with those children not being really up to par in reading, and yet you were in a school. So can you just address that for me?
Certainly, and thank you for your visit and thank you for your question. The difference is the combination of factors. And so, yes, serving students that are 93% qualifying for free reduced lunch does create some common challenges. Students are one part of the equation. The quality of teacher, quality of curriculum is the other. And so the changes that I mentioned making to have a curriculum with more teacher supplemental supports, more set lesson plans with scripted modeling are the things that are needed. I think when we were previously, we were smaller and had a fewer number of teachers and therefore more controlled, set of quality there. So it's a combination of those factors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're doing math.
We're
sorry.
doing math.
Sorry. In full truth, we're mathing. That's what we're, sorry.
And it's Common Core, so I'm confused. Because I'm old.
I mean, I guess it just depends on where. I have a hard time because I believe especially with Kinder, the way that it's counted, he can get K2 numbers that he wants, and he can increase his enrollment in high school with his current enrollment cap. So I'm just confused as to why. I don't know. But then that gives you an opportunity to come back here, show us after everything you've been implementing, show us the growth and proficiency, show us all those pieces, especially after having the K2 kiddos, before adding on those extra grade levels. But I mean, I don't know where everybody else is at. So,
President Sensen, board members, I would also be a fan of slow growth. I think it makes sense to add K2, and I like the idea of having full day kindergarten, but I'm supportive of it being a slow growth model to come back and demonstrate more academic growth and more consistent growth.
So what I'm hearing is, after all your math, that we would give them K2, but let them grow within where they're at and come back when they have additional data to continue to grow, is what I sense the consensus is. I hear.
President Sentiment.
Yes, Mr. Mason.
Are there any business concerns you might have, or reasons, or any other reasons why you asked for the enrollment cap increase? I mean, outside of just growth that you're projecting?
Not primarily. Our business model is strong, and our team, led by Angela, does a tremendous job with that. The concern is, at the 9:15, we're having to either enroll a lot of new students later, like we're currently doing, or we're forcing out our existing freshmen in order to have room for the K2 students, based on, again, my math, which may be...
which might be better than mine. I mean, that you're at what right now?
So right now, the 789 is what's in the request. Right now, over 3 years, our current freshman, which is listed as 129 in the executive summary, will be replacing a class of 50 in seniors, I think 60 in juniors. And so that alone is going to create an increase of 125 students.
Right. So I have 71 spaces left over where you can double count kinders, which would then get you. So that's why I'm saying. So I'm showing that in 9:15, you have 2 years that we're not hindering you in that respect for 2 years, but that you'd have to come back for continued growth. Because I agree, I don't want to hinder your high school, right? You've built up this 4-section, I'm assuming 4-section freshmen, so you don't want to,
Right.
funnel them down to 3. So I understand that. So I guess that's where I'm at. So that's why I'm saying K2, that gives you a year or two with your K2 kiddos, and then you come back and say, hey, here's the awesome, here's the
Right.
growth that we've been doing. We've had the K2 at least for 2 years. Let's keep these high schoolers in our program. And we say, absolutely.
Can I check my understanding on the math for a second?
Yeah, please.
So 789 students is what we're working off of as far as the executive summary.
Mm-hmm.
The current freshmen going through high school will lead to an increase of 125 students. 789 plus 125 is 914 without any K2.
So I'm talking about, so next year you will need 30 for high school.
I see what you're saying.
Right. Right. So we're not talking about a 3 or 4 year projection. I'm just saying next year you need 30 for high school.
Got it.
Based on your enrollment matrix.
Yeah.
Which then leaves you 71 for your K2 program to fill.
The enrollment matrix has 25 in each grade in year one alone.
Right. But kinder can count as 12 and a half.
I see. Okay.
Right.
Mary Ellen, I'm not questioning your math skills, but I think
No
it's
question.
60 in the high school. Because if the 120 ninth graders move to 10th grade, that's going to increase that by 30.
Right. So I got 30.
And the 11th grade is also going to increase from 60 to 90. So that's 30 in each. So that's 60 total there.
I just think that if we're going to give them K-12, I just think we have to provide some, knowing that you kind of have this pig in the python, right, with your freshman
Right.
class of continuing on and
So you want 30 to get to a second class? I mean, I'm not comfortable with the enrollment cap increase. I am comfortable K2. So, but I am also not comfortable shooting you in the foot with your high school class. So, for lack of a better term, so 30. I would do 30. That gets them 2 years of before coming back.
Are we sure that we can count that kindergarten? I was under the impression when I asked for the 1,200 that kindergarten couldn't be halved, that they count as a full student because we're doing full day kindergarten.
Do you want the technical answer or do you want the practical answer?
Whatever is
Probably what
most
you can
honest
be
and
held- what
integrated.
you can be held accountable to
Yeah.
by us, right? For
Yeah.
this enrollment cap.
And the ADE in terms of
Right.
funding.
It has been our intent to work with ADE to make that enrollment cap versus ADM a pure across the board. We have not gotten there yet. So at this time, there is some wiggle room with that, as much as I hate to admit it.
Okay.
We won't come out and get you for it.
Okay. 60? Okay, 60. And then we can.
I like 60. Let's
Okay.
do it.
60. All right, so here we go. All right. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to increase the grade level served to K-12 and increase the enrollment cap to 951 plus 60. Oh, 915 plus 60. I could have done that one. 975. Sorry, for the contract held by Empower College Prep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Justin. Ms. Rice? Alexis?
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett?
I'm serious math.
Dr. Crockett? Mr. Close?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff?
Aye.
President Sensman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for your time.
All right, next up, Padilla. And I just wanted to mention that we've had now the third EPM in a row, new EPM. And so clearly, Rachel, Joanna, you guys are doing a great job because they've all come before the board and no one's looked nervous. Like
Making
you
us
guys,
work.
you guys have all done a really phenomenal job for having been on the job for how many months now? 2 months, and you're before the board presenting on this. So I just want to really compliment you all for what a great job you've done. Well, you haven't done it yet, but
On behalf of my counterparts who have
No,
done it already.
but Rachel and Joanna, just great job on getting everyone up to speed. And usually, folks, the EPMs aren't before the board as quickly as this. So you guys are definitely a class unto yourself of how great you guys are doing. So
Thank you.
with that, no pressure.
Thank you, Madam President. So President Sensman, Superintendent Hoffman, and board members, the Padilla Academies, Inc. has submitted a new school amendment request to add Padilla Liberal Arts Academy to its charter.
The new school will be located in Phoenix, serve students in grades 9 through 12, and plan to open in fiscal year 2021. In conjunction with the new school amendment request, the charter holder has requested to increase its grades served from K-8 to K-12 to accommodate the requested new school, and increase its enrollment cap from 900 to 1,800. The charter holder was identified for targeted school improvement by the Arizona Department of Education in fiscal year 2018 for the subgroup of students with disabilities. Therefore, this additional data has been included in the executive summary for your review.
And this is essentially the same request that they came in last month for, that we denied?
Yes.
Okay.
In
All right.
September.
In September, sorry.
Because we did our first board meeting.
We didn't have the letter grades at that point, and the data at that point. Okay. Yep. All right. Is there a representative?
There is. Hello again. I'm Dr. Brian Windsor, the founder and executive director and principal and other things of Paideia Academy. I have with me Mrs. Mendonça, who's the director of assessment, intervention, and data, and Ms. Garrison, who is the director of curriculum and instruction. I want to give you 4 reasons to vote yes for our expansion. Reason 1. Our historical growth over the years, we started in 2012 with 362 children. And this year, our enrollment at the beginning was 890. We currently have 873 due to natural attrition that happens. Our building capacity is at 900. If we don't expand or do something, the bubble or the pig in a python, I think you said, is going to cause us to outgrow our building and our current space. Every year we have waiting lists in our grade levels. So our first reason is also for future growth of our area. As Senator Miranda pointed out, the 202 is coming right by us, and right where we want to build our Paideia Liberal Arts Academy, there's going to be 30,000 new homes at that area. As far as the support of our community and our scholars and our parents, over the last, since our last meeting, we put up the conceptual drawing of our campus, and we have all the scholars and some scholars, a bunch, 27 who came back to sign the petition and make their efforts and their desire known that they want a Paideia to continue through, especially the parents with younger scholars, and now their 8th graders are moving on, or a 9th grader now is moving to 10th grade. They want this. The developer of that area calls me frequently. He sought me out. He looked at our website, and he came and met with me several times because he's anxious for a Paideia model, whole person model of school to be in that area. Just surrounding Paideias, where we hope to build, there's 3,000 new homes planned just within the next 2 years. In our surrounding area, there are 37 that I could count, and I could be off on my data, but there's 37 K-8 schools. And of those 37 K-8 schools, I looked, and there's over 4,000 kids leaving those K-8 schools. And those K-8 schools don't have associated high schools to go to, like Empower does. And so they're just going to go out into somewhere else to find a school. So as far as the growth is there for the population. The growth is there for our kids who want to continue with the Paideia model. Reason number 2, our academic growth and achievement that we were not able to talk about in September is good. We are a B school. When it was the Ames and we were first starting, we were a D school and just making our way as we expanded so rapidly with new scholars coming into our campus. In 2017, we were a C. In 2018, we were a C. And we went from 65 points to 75 points this year. And if you recall with what Ms. Garrison and Ms. Mendonça said of all the changes that we put in place last year in our curriculum and our instructional models, it is obvious through the data that increased. Our current data, well, I wanted to review also with you our full academic year stability scores from 2017 to 2019. Our 3-year FAE scores in ELA went from 43 to 61. In math, 3-year went from 37 to 45. Our 3-year in all went from 48 to 53. Our 2-year FAE, 38 in English language arts, 38 to 62, 38 to 48 in math, and overall 42 to 55. In our 1-year FAE, with these changes that we put into place, went from 37 to 65% in English language arts, and math from 33 to 51, overall 41 to 58. It shows stability, it shows growth, it shows that what we're doing is working. I also want to point out that our own internal data, we use the measure of academic progress from NWEA, and our internal data show already the MAP score is highly predictive of what they'll do on the AZ Merit, that already in math, 62% of our scholars have already met their projected growth for the year. 57% have already met in reading, and 62% have already met in language. So what we have done and put in place is obviously working. I want to point out the science. In 2018, you're right, it was 36% passing. In 2019, we have 46% passing, 2 points away from getting those 2 bonus points. I want to point out our subgroup improvement. The trend is going up. And English language EL learners went from 19% to 20. In math, the English language learners went from 10 to 22. Our special ed population, in English language arts went from 7 to 20%, and math 6 to 13. So you see the trend. What we're doing is working. Our economically disadvantaged, which we have over 85% FRL, free and reduced lunches at our school. English language arts, they increased from 50% to 60%, and in math from 35% to 44%. Our academic growth and stability is strong. Reason number 3, our 5-mile radius comparison is strong. We outperformed 85% of the schools in English in ELA, in K-8 schools. In math, we outperformed 56% of the schools of K-8. In high schools, that's the challenge. In high schools, in English language arts, we outperformed 89% of the high schools in that 5-mile radius. We outperformed 73% of the schools in math. Reason number 4, which is where my passion is. There is a great need for the Paideia Liberal Arts Academy model, a whole person model. I appreciate in September, Superintendent Hoffman, when you pointed out the suicide rates, and we had a moment, right? The Paideia model is a social emotional learning model for the whole person. It directly empowers our children to find their voice and then help other people to find theirs. There is a lack of viable options of high schools in our area. A recent data from the Arizona Regent College Completion report. Yes, we can get kids to fill out the FAFSA and to get to college. Can we get them to complete college? The answer is no. In 2011 graduates, in our area, there was 1,260 high school graduates from my area. In 2017, and then this week I looked at the 2018 report, it's very similar. There was 96 who graduated from a 2-year institution within the 5 years. That's 7.6%. We got them in, we couldn't help them to continue. There was 131 who graduated from a 4-year institution. That's 10%. The question isn't, can I get them to college? The question is to empower them and give them their voice and confidence that they can make, and the tools to make it through college. The Measure of America report on disconnected youth in 2018, the 2018 data says that in Congressional District number 7, there's a 15.7% of disconnected youth. That's 16 to 19-year-olds who are not in school and are either unemployed or underemployed. That's a major problem. America's health rankings data on teen suicide, Arizona, in the 2019 data, is 13 out of 100,000. That's above the national average. I believe that the Paideia model is the answer to this. Paideia has a unique program. It's a whole person program. Intentionally empowers the body, mind, heart, and spirit. This unique and powerful model addresses the problems that the youth face by empowering them not only to enter, but to complete either college or there's other post-secondary, other post-high school academic and programs that we want them to complete. We want to have them a meaningful career, that they can earn enough money to be comfortable. We want them to be thoughtful and active citizens and to have a caring and functional families. Thank you for allowing me to speak again, and I hope you see your way to say yes for our expansion.
Board members, other questions?
President Senseman.
Of course.
Got it right that time. Hi, welcome back. So talk to me. So we see your growth, right? You had 10% in ELA, which bumped you over the state average for your K-8, which was great. Your science increased a little below the state average, but increased nonetheless. And same thing, we saw an increase in math. But talk to me about your math, because you're still at 27%. And I know you said with your benchmarking, you're predicted to be at 60. I mean, that's a huge, you said 60-something percent. I don't remember the exact
Math was 62% have already met.
Right. So that, I mean, that's a huge, I mean.
We should celebrate.
Yeah,
Yay.
that's a huge difference. But what are you guys, are you doing something different this year than you did last year with math? Or I'm just concerned about your math score still at 27%.
No, same thing. Are you okay, Ms. Garrison? She's not feeling well, so be gentle. This is stressful.
Hi, Victoria Garrison. So yeah, one of the things we added, and we did this change last year. Actually, we did an upgrade to our math curriculum. We used the Math in Focus curriculum, but when we were looking at our internal data, we saw that obviously we weren't hitting the growth that we wanted anyway. So we started looking at, okay, so we brought together our curriculum review committee and said, what are some of the changes that we might need to make? We didn't see a need for a total change in curriculum, but we saw a need to upgrade the curriculum that we were using. So we have moved to the upgraded Math in Focus curriculum. And then we also added a math intervention class that each of our grade levels has a math intervention class. And an additional item we did this year was allowing for our grade levels to departmentalize. So we have teachers who are specializing just in math instruction. So they're really focused on good quality math instruction, on delivering that math instruction, starting in the second grade all the way up to 8th.
Can you talk to me about, for whatever reason, your enrollment matrix isn't downloading for me, and I don't have it memorized from when I looked at the materials previously. Can you tell me what your expected enrollment, what you're projecting is for high school?
Yes, our hope is that in fiscal year 2021, 370 is what we'd like to start with. Is that what you meant?
That is, yeah.
Yes,
So 370, and what's the breakdown? What's the 9th and 10th breakdown of that?
9th, 110, and 50 10th graders. And our hope is that we get about half that are continuing Paideia and maybe half that are coming from the outside.
What's your 8th grade enrollment?
8th grade enrollment right now is 50, and 7th grade is 60.
Okay.
So, do you have any other questions?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So I continue to be concerned about your academics. And because I know that this board has denied schools that have academics that are well in excess of the AZ merit scores, and wanting to have multiple years of data and not just 1 year. You did good in 1 year, and you're asking to add 9-12, and you've never done 9-12 before. So I do have continued concerns with this. because, we're still, you have growth, which I applaud you for having growth. I still am not super comfortable. I do understand, obviously, I live in a community up north where, we have rapid growth and we need schools. So I have some sympathy for wanting to have that, but I also want to see, I want to see better data. I want to see more data to ensure that you're on.
How many years? Can you quantify that? Because inside of everything I've looked at, there isn't a metrics that says, hey, you have to have 3 years or 4. Can you quantify that?
I think our board has been clear with other operators that are new operators or operators that we've wanted to see some consistency in the growth and to be at or above the AZ merit scores. Is what our board has consistently been, interested in seeing. I mean, we want to have a performing portfolio. We want to have schools that are doing well, and you're only 1 out of 3 even meeting the average. And so, I guess I'm trying to find a way to bridge that gap to get there, to want to do it. But I'm just struggling with that. I don't know where other board members are. I do recognize, that there is a need, out there. But I guess I'm just trying to understand your capacity to be able to grow by 900 students. Because what you're
we
saying,
wouldn't grow in 900 in one moment.
No, I understand
Okay,
that.
good.
I understand that. But you were saying that in the first year you would have a third of that, is what you said previously, correct?
Yes.
And that would all be mostly in the high school, would be my assumption?
No, it would be 7, 8, 9, 10. So, yeah, 7th and 8th. Our continuing students would be 7th, 8th, and 9th, majority of them. And then some 10th graders that are going to come back who've committed, and then some new ones as well.
Talk to me. And I know I asked this question before, but I don't remember the specifics. So I'm going to ask it again, so I apologize. But talk to me about who you're bringing in that has high school experience on your team.
I'm glad you asked. I have high school experience. I don't know if you know my background, but I've actually, in my earlier year, in the early days of charter school, I ran some charter high schools. Our junior academy team all come from high schools, and that one of the reasons they came says, we're expanding, we're here. We'll go down to the 7th and 8th grade and teach so that we can expand up. Our 6th grade ELA teacher has high school experience. They're all anxious to be able to get up there into the high school. Mrs. Mendonça has high school experience. So it's not like this is our first time ever being in a school. We all have pedigrees, and we all have experience of high schools.
Right. So I guess along those lines, I think that's great to have that background. But if you guys are all going to focus on the high school, how does the K-8 still
Great
get the
question.
attention that it needs when you
Great
don't have
question.
great scores?
A great question. Which we don't have what?
We don't have, your scores aren't great on the AZ merit yet. They're not above the average of the state average. So I guess my question is, you're telling me that you're going to take all of your key resources out of the K-8 to focus on the high school, which I understand why you would want to do that, but talk to me about how the K-8 doesn't suffer.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's what I've been planning for. So we do internal leadership training. Our current vice assistant principal has taught with us, so we elevated her and made her an assistant principal, and I'm coaching her every day and just gradually shifting out so she could take the role. Our dean is our scholar support specialist, kind of a dean of students. He's been with us, so we're intensely training him. The other thing we have as a Stephen Covey, as a Lighthouse School, internal training. So each of our team leads from K through 8, they also undergo intensive training in our model and in leadership. And a lot of what we do at Paideia is the team leads their team a lot. It's distributed leadership. There's no way I could do the whole thing. So the model will continue because the leaders are there just chugging away.
And what was the decision? Why did you determine that your math curriculum wasn't or was good? You just needed the updated copyright date. What was the?
She met with they looked at all the data from last year with a curriculum review committee. That's teachers of math, across the grade levels. And as they looked at it over the summer, that's why they decided to tweak it and add some other ideas in there.
Because 27% is still really low. So to not jump ship and, get more resources, or I'm just concerned
Well, you can't jump ship the first year.
about that decision.
Yeah, I mean, if
for
we-
curriculum. It's not your
Yeah.
first year in using
No.
that curriculum.
Right. I mean, now you're $100,000 every couple of years because, that didn't work, and you move on.
But you
get
spent the money
some-
to update your curriculum,
Mhm.
correct? So you bought all new curriculum. So you spent
Yes.
the money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the year before. And then we saw the changes, and then as a matter of leadership and self-evaluation and looking at data, you always make tweaks. And so that's what the Curriculum Review Committee does under the direction of Ms. Garrison.
Yeah.
Question.
Madam Superintendent.
Board members, and thanks again for coming back. And it is great to see the growth that you've made since the last school year. My question is for the high school. Can you talk to me about what the support staff would look like? Because when we're talking about high school, students have different needs. And so if you could talk about special education as well as other support staff that would be, and whether or not they'd be part-time or full-time.
Right. So our special ed director will go over there and guide that in this first few years and watch over the high school special ed program. We are going to hire a school counselor that fits the model of the Paideia model. I'm going to move over there for pretty much 3/4 time, so I can still also then coach Mrs. Kaisara over at the elementary school.
Would the counselor be full-time?
Oh yes, full time. Yes, we're talking about all full time people. Yes.
School psychologist?
We have a school psychologist that works for us part time already, so he would do both.
For how many students total then? That would be kind of a big caseload. For how? Sorry.
Well, the school psychologist mostly does the evaluations and that, so it's not like a school psychologist would be located on campus as the counselor would be.
No. So I'm just thinking about their caseload. I know that's a concern for school psychologists. I was just at their annual conference, so they talked about caseload.
And we have a wonderful company that does our occupational therapy, our speech, our physical therapy. So they can expand because we're in contact with them as well. They're highly involved in our planning.
So we've been doing some math over here.
Okay.
Again, which is dangerous.
Yes,
But I think for me, I would be okay with allowing the grade level expansion, but I'm not okay with the number of students because I'd like to give you the opportunity to grow into high school, but I would also like to see you come back and continue to show us the growth that you're on. And so, with that, we were kind of trying to figure out what would be an acceptable number to be able to allow you to grow, similar to what we were looking at with the last agenda item, to allow you to grow, but then also for you to show that the trajectory that you're on is in fact the trajectory that you're going to stay on. And if that is in fact the trajectory, then you should have no problem coming before the board to get an expansion request, or not, I'm sorry, an enrollment cap request. Which is similar to what we've done with other schools that are wanting to grow rapidly, is continue to see that that growth in the students. So I am comfortable doing doing the 9-12 increase to give you a K-12, but only doing an enrollment cap of, I believe, 250 students. Yeah, and so I don't know. I think there's consensus with that.
Can I just interject? I would withdraw. I can't make a budget on that. I have to build a new building. Yeah.
How many students were you planning on having the first year?
I think it was 370.
Oh, well.
Yeah, there's no builder that would come and say, yeah, we're gonna invest in that. That's just reality.
Well, I think there are buildings that would say that. I've opened schools with 250, and had investors invest. So I don't think
President
that's.
Senseman, so are you telling us that the underwriters for your loan that's going to finance the building improvements, they're telling you that they require this enrollment cap increase?
No, our current facility there's no room to build anymore.
I understand, and so you're building a new facility,
right?
And so you're saying that in order to move into that new facility, to build the new facility, you need the full increase you've requested here.
No, as we've talked with them, it's like that 370 to 400 to start, and then we're going to build part of the campus, and then as we grew, we just build the rest of the campus.
So what happens when you don't have 370 students show up and the money's not there? If that's the minimum you need. I mean, that's a big high school. 370 and 2 grade levels.
It's 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th.
Because you're adding sections to 7th and 8th.
Mm-hmm. It would be, because then I'm going to have to come back, next year again? And then the next year, every year, just to get as an increase? Is that what we're proposing?
I mean, the hope would be that we would see the growth that you're telling us is there, and that the enrollment cap increases would warrant that, and that your kind of 2 out of 3 below the state average test scores would continue to be on that trajectory to improve, and then we would have that confidence that you would be able to have the capacity to have additional students. So I wouldn't see you having to come back every year. What we're saying is we think, give you the opportunity to have a high school, but we want to see the growth in the students on those merit tests, and come up with a way to, grow in a way that gives us confidence in the education that you're providing.
Okay.
President Senseman, so I'm a little confused. Are you still withdrawing your request?
No, I'll go back and see what we can do.
Okay.
Are we good? Okay. Yeah, I just need to figure out what my total number is really fast. Logistically, okay.
It's 1150.
You don't want that as your total. Let me give you a good total that you want. Over 900, right? 1150. Okay.
President Senseman?
Yes.
So, as listening to this discussion and understanding what you want to do, I mean, what we have here is a situation where the outcomes aren't meeting the economics. And you're asking for, and I get the developer model, I get what you need to do, but the sense that I had that is the board was uncomfortable giving you that because of your performance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not willing to make a model work to fit to put a number out there that makes the economics work for this. We need to do it, and if the number that we're comfortable with doesn't work for your economics, so we can make a motion that says this is what we'd be willing to do, or I think you would, or you could have the sense of the board, the number that they were talking about. And I agree, because we are below state average on 2 things, and I also agree that you outperform other schools in the area. So there's sort of a kind of a push and a pull going on here. But I don't want to give you a number that fits your economic model. I want to give you the number that's right for the kids,
Sure.
and right for the charter movement, and right for Arizona. So, if we want to make that the motion of the number that kind of what you were talking about, and I trust all the educators here, and I know a little bit about business, but I also don't want to put you in a position where if you're not performing as well as other schools out there, you're going to have a hard time hitting your numbers as well, which creates a lot of pressure.
I don't understand the last thing you said.
So if you're underperforming the state average and you're not, the outcomes are not, superior to other schools around you, you're going to have a hard time marketing and getting kids to come to your school. So, I mean, that's just a challenge, and that's a few years down the road. But I don't know if you would want us to make a motion with a lower number than you want, or do you want to withdraw and come back with?
No, I think whatever you feel is wise, then I'll go to our people and see, can we make this work? I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with 250. I think you hit the nail on the head on why we would consider that, because really opening a high school with underperforming state average scores is kind of the conversation. But when you take into account the fact that you're performing above the area and that you've showed, in my opinion, successive increase, right? You went from 28 to 38 to 48 in ELA, 23 to 19, but then to 27 in math, which is, I still think that area you guys really need to go back and look at, whether it's a brand new curriculum or whatnot. That doesn't seem to be, I mean, hopefully you're coming back next year and you're going, we got 65%, you know, for math.
so.
But then that 30, 37, 45, that's why I'm comfortable saying, okay, let's do the high school, but not at 1,200. So I'm good with 250 unless somebody has a different opinion. Okay. Okay. So I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to add a new school, increase the grade levels served to K-12, and increase the enrollment cap to 1,150 for the contract held by the Paideia Academies, Inc.
All right. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Close. Alexis?
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett? Mr. Close?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff?
Aye.
President Senseman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we're moving on to agenda item I, replication application.
We have, excuse me, American Charter Schools Foundation, DBA Southridge High School, submitted an application to replicate its charter, which has been in operation since 2003. If approved, the new charter will be held by the same entity as the existing charter and will hold a contract with the same education service provider. The proposed school will be called Ridgeview College Preparatory High School and has a target start date of August 3rd, 2020. The charter will have an enrollment cap of 600 and serve grades 9 through 12 in Santan Valley.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome.
Madam President, members of the board, we're here to request replication of a charter of one of our high schools, Southridge High School. And I might mention that 2 years ago we came before the same board and asked for the same replication, which was granted. We do have a reason that we didn't meet the 2-year requirement at that time, and we'll explain that in whatever detail you desire. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our Vice President of Academic Services, Ms. Mary Berg, who has been leading the effort for this replication.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Berg, thank you.
Hello, President Senseman, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to come before you today. We are applying to replicate Southridge High School, and I would like to talk just a little bit about Southridge and about what we do. Most of the time when I'm up here, I'm talking about our alternative schools. All of our schools aren't alternative. Southridge High School is not an alternative school. It is a traditional high school. It is a college prep high school, but the students that we seek to serve are students that are primarily coming out of the 8th grade program, perhaps a C or a D level student. At our graduations every year, we invite students to stand if they're the first in their family to graduate from high school. We still have, years later, 25 to 30% of our population that's graduating standing, indicating they're the first to graduate from high school. Our students come in wanting to learn, their families come in wanting to learn, but oftentimes our students are fairly unprepared for high school, much less the rigors of college. We take our 4 years, we have our students very seriously to get them ready to go to college, and our model looks different than the traditional high schools in the area. To start with, our high schools are smaller, whereas high schools will usually go, high schools 400 to 600 students. We do not want large high schools. We want a chance to get to know our students, get to know their families, and be able to support them throughout their 4 years of college. Our scheduling looks different. In most high schools, you'll see the 6 or 7 classes. We keep our students with 4 classes a day, and that allows them to get to know 4 teachers, develop 4 relationships a day instead of trying to do 6 teachers and scramble between classes. This scheduling, however, does have some limitations. And when I'm standing before you today, I do want to talk about some of those limitations. One of them is when we schedule, when we're having students come in that are significantly behind in both English and math, our biggest emphasis those first 2 years is to catch them up in English and math. So oftentimes a freshman's schedule is going to look like they're going to have an English class, they're going to have a foundational or support class for English, they'll have a math class, and that same foundational or support class. Our goal, of course, is to wean them off that, but usually they spend a year in a program that's similar to that. We will start to integrate then some of our science class and earth science class, but what happens by the time our students are sitting for a science test, which has to be given in 9th or 10th grade, they oftentimes don't have the background in biology they should have at that time. We know that, we're aware of that. That's where biology starts entering in towards the end of 10th grade, and then we go on to make sure that they have a solid foundation in science, and we have AP science classes as well as dual enrollment science classes that they're eligible for when they're in their junior and senior year, and our AP students are passing with 3s on their AP tests. So we do have the science component, it's just not there in those first 2 years. I'm also standing before you because previous year we had TSI because of our ELL population. I just want to assure you that our ELL population is a true ELL population. We are dealing with students that are pre-emergent, emergent, basic, intermediate levels who just aren't accessing the test at the same level other students are. I think, though, you have our data before you right now, and you can see that our ELL subgroup is definitely growing in their performance, and we are definitely beating the state average of 6 to 7% passing for ELL students in English 9 as well as math classes. With that being said, I will ask if you have any questions, or I'm going to talk about moving to Santan Valley and why.
Yeah, if you could, that was going to be along
Perfect.
my questions.
Okay, so we chose to replicate this school. It's an American Charter School Foundation school. It's a traditional school. We're planning on putting a traditional school down in the Santan Valley area. That's a unique area. We have Queen Creek on one side with families that have students in A's and B's high schools, and it's a very strongly performing area. We have another side with C-level high schools that's not as strongly performing, as well as students that are coming with a high free and reduced lunch population, which we are used to from Southridge. Our goal is to move right. We're kind of, when you look at it, kind of like we're in the middle of that area. We're going to do a sweep from around us for students that are interested, but we're looking for those C-level students that are coming in from the 8th grade that need that push. We realize that we will get those students without a doubt. We also realize we're going to get some higher performing students in there. So what we are doing with that is we have dealt with this as well as at Southridge with a lower socioeconomic status, but with kids that are coming in more highly performing and kids that aren't, is we will have teachers in that are ready for that. We have an AVID program that's designed to grab kids, help them build up to college, as well as we'll be offering dual enrollment in the same AP level classes that we offer currently. So we believe we're prepared to handle both ends of that, but our goal really is reaching for that C-level student who wants to go to college, whose parents maybe want them to go to college, and help them get there.
Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions of looking at like what the other schools are, and it appears that in that area there seems to be, from an academic standpoint, though, almost more depressed in that area that you would be going into, and the model that you're replicating is one that thrives, I guess you would say, on that type of.
Those are the students we choose to serve and want to serve, and I think that we can make the most impact with, and we want to keep our schools small. You'll see that we're growing with 9th grade class, 10th grade class, 11th grade class. Those numbers are important to us that we start with because we also, in high school, we need to have enough students to have a variety of teachers so that they have, 2 math teachers, 2 English teachers, so that we can offer that variety of classes. And then we'll grow that up.
And so this replication would be for 900 students?
We would be starting, the first year would be 250 students.
I guess where I'm getting at is the replication, if we were to do it straight across, would be for 900 students? Or total, like what your enrollment, your ECAP would be?
For this particular high school, or are you adding the 2 high schools together?
Well, I'm just
I think we should be going, this high school, the capacity would be 600 for the school where it's Santan Valley or Ridgeview.
Okay. What, I guess staff can, what would, because it doesn't say in here, it just says.
They're not
I
requesting.
believe I believe the 3-year plan says enrollment comes out to 455 by the 3rd year.
Okay,
By 2023.
but the school that they're replicating has 900 students, so I just want to make sure I understand.
The overall cap is 600.
Enrollment cap is 600?
The overall, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what I was confused by, and that's what I was asking, because if we're replicating the exact same high school, it was 900, but.
You're not fully comparing apples to apples. You're correct. So the
Well, that wouldn't be the
900
first
the 900 that's referenced in the ADM chart in the executive summary is the 900 enrollment cap for the existing charter for that high school, Southridge High School. The request before you today, the application indicates, their request indicates that the overall enrollment cap at full build out for the new charter and high school will be 600. And in the first 3 years, the growth plan is up to 455.
So I'm not excited about where your AZ merit scores are, obviously. But I can appreciate that the community that you're trying to go to doesn't have that great. The community that the school that you're replicating in also, I'm sure you could speak to, doesn't have a great surrounding area. So probably for the surrounding area of the school you're replicating, that's probably on the higher end of what's happening in that community. Or maybe you could speak to the school you're replicating. What does the academics look like around it?
Southridge High School?
Yeah.
So Southridge High School, if you look at the academics around there, you're going to see C schools around Southridge High School. I believe the large 1D, C schools and 1D school around Southridge High School. Southridge High School has had an A, they're now at a B. I believe a B is truly a representative where that school is today. Our goal is to, of course, reach an A. However, if you want to look back and say, hey, this school had an A, why did they drop to a B? Our student population has definitely shifted and changed. We didn't have an ELL population before. We now have one and welcome our ELL population and have a full SEI program for them. So I think we've seen some shift in our demographics, which is good for us. It's good for schools. That's what we do.
Thanks. Can you talk to me about your ELA scores? Because it seems like your model for math, right? So actually, let me back up. Are you doing like a 6-week math class or an 8-week math class?
9-week blocks.
9-week blocks. Okay.
Right.
So, okay, 9-week blocks. So then it looks like for math, the model is working, right? So because you went from a 34% passing to a 43% passing, which is 1% over in math for the state average, which is amazing. And so from what I heard, the justification for science is you kind of intend for science to always be low. Not that you want it that way, but because your model though is that you're going to focus on math and English, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
with knowing that, hey, that might mean science aim scores suffer, but if they took it their junior year, it would probably be better. So I can understand that. But then talk to me about ELA, because my issue with ELA is you started in FY17 at 30, FY18 at 31, statistically probably the same. I mean, 1% increase, but then you dropped 5% to 26% in ELA, and it goes back to, there's such a desperate need for charter high schools. I mean, I hear it all the time. We need charter high schools. We absolutely do, but we need, charter high schools that are going to perform either with growth or with, right? Like,
yep.
It has to make sense. And so talk to me about why with a decreasing ELA score, we should grant a charter high school.
I'm going to agree with, obviously our scores are what our scores are. It's something that we're continually working on. We have programs in place for our students that we're addressing, our students where they come in. They're coming in exceedingly low, and our job is to help them increase. And our programs, we continually monitor our programs. We continually monitor what we're doing in the high school as far as our schools, and that school as well will be fully staffed with a curriculum coach, a school leader. They will participate in our development programs as well for ELA teachers. We are building our programs. We're continually monitoring them. And I don't have an excuse for you. We are where we are, and that's what that's.
And just as far as the letter grade goes, there's not a lot for improvement on the 9-12 model. It definitely is more on the K-8 model where they really do that growth. Right. But your subgroup improvement, you have a 60% essentially, right? We calculated
Right.
to a percent out of what was possible. So that's also concerning when we talk about like where your improvement points are for your grade level. We're sitting at for me, dumbing it down, right, at a 60%. So I'm just, I'm just a little, concerned knowing with that being your data currently.
Right.
But I understand, your population and those things.
So our sorry,
Yeah.
with our subgroup, I'm gonna let you cover that one. Yeah, yep. So with our subgroup data, it is at a 60%. We have a fairly small group of students testing, so a couple students can swing the data. It's stayed fairly stable. Our goal is with our subgroups, is we have some differences, and I am not denying that. I'm looking at the same data you're looking at. All I can say is we're monitoring it, we're adjusting our instruction, that's what our data says. I'm going to jump back. Emily was also saying that we were also dealing with some teacher turnover, that's kind of what life is right now in Arizona. Yeah. We have difficult populations, we're striving to get the best teachers in, and we're working.
Thank you. Staff, and I apologize if I missed this. Do we have comparisons to the new area based off of their current AZ Merit scores? I saw the new area based off of the state scores, but I thought we did like one that was based off of their current scores. Does that make sense?
We historically have not done that in replication.
Oh, okay.
I have it in my notes to add for the future.
That would be wonderful because it's just hard to prepare because you're comparing them against scores that they didn't achieve, right?
I'm sorry, Madam Superintendent.
I could ask a question too, I guess. Board members, I'm kind of confused why we don't think the 16% for science is important, especially when you guys are showing stronger math scores. I think those go hand in hand. And when I'm thinking about what I want for our high school students, we have new science standards as of a year ago. We're going to be rolling out a new science assessment coming in the year 21-22. So I personally also think that the 16% for science is also alarming when we're looking at duplicating for a new high school.
I think it's incredibly alarming. Part of it is our scheduling. We also came through last year with one science teacher for an entire high school because we could not hire a science teacher. This year we have a person at our corporate office, much like the ADE does now, that is just in charge of recruitment and retention. And we have 2 science teachers at the school this year, which is appropriate for a school that size, we feel. We were extremely short-staffed last year, and our model was the concentration down the math and English area. I hear you on the science, and that's something that we are concerned about too. It's just balancing that model for math and English with our students right now. And I can assure you that we do offer AP Science when the 11th and 12th grade years, as well as dual enrollment, so those students are entering high school or entering college prepared in the sciences as well.
So for me, obviously, along the lines of what Rachel was talking about, I want to see more charter high schools, that are out there, and I am concerned with, with where the test scores are, but similar, maybe to what we did with Padilla, who I think is in a similar boat as you. You're testing above in one of the 3. You have a B letter grade. I would be amenable to looking at reducing the total ECAP to a lower number. That would allow you to obviously kind of maybe hit your first and second year, in FY 21 and 22, to be able to hit kind of what those trajectories are, and then come back to us to get to the growth that you think you would have there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have, a couple years of data to show us of what's happening in your school. So that's what I would be comfortable with doing, is looking at that FY 22 number of 375, which is about half, maybe a little over half of what the requested ADM or the ECAP would be.
I think the difference, though, between this and the last school is that with Padilla, what made me feel comfortable was the continued increase. So maybe low achievement, but then we talk about, right, like not placing all the eggs in one basket of achievement, because I don't think that that's equitable. But I don't see, except for in math, an increase. If anything, there's a consistent decrease in both ELA and science. And so I'm just having a really hard time even approving a high school without, kind of getting this one together, showing improvement. I don't know that, you're going to hit 42%. And again, just like with Padilla, we didn't require that of them either, but what I feel like we did require was improved growth, showing that we're on track to achieve what, is at least the state average in a non-alternative high school, right? And in a traditional high school. That's, I don't know.
Just
Can I-
clarification? Sorry. Can I talk? Thanks. Sorry, I did. Are you planning to grow one grade level at a time or open 9 through 12 all at once?
We would open ninth grade,
First year?
ninth grade, and some 11th grade first year, like 75 11th grade spots the first, 10th grade spots the first year, and then some 11th grade. Sorry, I had it right
Okay.
here.
Sorry, it's probably in here. I just
Yeah.
what I'm looking at. So, I don't know. Well, and sorry, and in your dream plans, how many sections in ninth grade? 4 sections?
I have about 130 students. If we were fully enrolled, full capacity, it would be about 130 students per grade level, about 5 classes per grade level.
Is there a reason you're not opening it as an alternative?
Yes.
Well, okay, sorry. What is the reason you're? Great answer. What is the reason you're not opening it as an alternative? I mean, especially because it seems like from your heart that's essentially what you're trying to target in a sense, right? And maybe I'm misunderstanding. So
let me talk to you about our alternative schools. What the difference between this school and alternative school is for us is our alternative schools have a fairly high turnover. Is students will start, they're coming to us behind credits. A lot of times when kids hear alternative schools, they're thinking, as much as you try it, so that's a school for kids who didn't make it, who aren't succeeding, who are quote unquote not the good kids, they're the bad kids.
Sure.
We have worked to dispel that myth with our alternative schools. When we opened these schools, we purposely did not open them as alternative. We wanted to say, no, this is a school for all kids, although we do that with alternatives too, but we expect these kids, these families are coming to us in ninth grade, they're committing to us for ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. We don't see nearly the turnover that we see in an alternative school, and we also try really to build that ninth grade class. So we're building a class coming through with kids don't have the expectations, I'm going to quit or I'm going to leave or it's okay to do that. They don't think that at all. The graduation rate here is at 94%. They know when they start. We fully expect them to commit to not only graduating high school, but also commit to going to college. And that's why we don't want to put an alternative school in. We haven't put alternative schools in. We have 3 schools that do college prep this way right now. It's worked well for us. We've been attracting the families that we want to attract, where we still have those first-year graduates or first generation to graduate from high school. We still have those C students that feel perfectly welcome coming through our doors, and we still have parents that are entrusting us the care of their child to get them to college and know that that's what our goal is, despite their child coming with grades that don't. If you saw these children in 8th grade, you would say, this is not a child who's traditionally set. They're not coming with A's and B's.
Right. I'm having a hard time with the.
I'm going to channel
Vice President
Colin
Lee,
to the left.
I have the information you asked for.
Oh.
So in the area they are going to, there are 4 schools with ELA scores higher than theirs. It should be noted one of those is only 1 point higher. There are 3 schools with math scores higher, and all 5 schools in the new area have science scores that are higher.
How many for science?
5.
And do you know the percentages of that? I mean,
Well, it's a total number of 5, so it's 80%, 60%, and 100%.
I'm just going to encourage you to think about this too. We don't go into areas, we're not pulling those A and B students. That's not who we pull. We're pulling those C students and giving them the opportunity to change the trajectory. So I hear you, and I hear when you compare, it's like, we're not going to pull that whole gamut of students.
Right. No, I understand that. My problem is the decrease trend, right? Like, so if you came here saying, this is our mission, these are the students we want, we know going in that we're going to maybe be a C school because of proficiency, and that is okay, or B school, you know, and that is okay with us because this is what we've targeted. I love that. I think that there's a school for that. I get what you're doing. We're not going I get the mission of it, and I actually fully support and am super excited about the mission of it. My problem is the decrease, and that's, I mean, even if you were staying consistent, my problem is the decrease.
How would you feel if you looked at our scores when you're reviewing the data on the FY19, the proficiency scores off the second page, where it's the scores that are coming in? Are you on? Can I just?
I'm just on the summary, so, but.
Wait, is that okay?
Do you want me to read? You can.
Sure, you can.
So what she's providing is a breakdown from ADE that has the specificity of their proficiency data per end of course test. So ELA grade 9, ELA grade 10. Would you like to see that?
Sure.
While we're looking at that, could I just ask, is there I'm really just stealing Mr. Mason's question. Is there a business reason that this needs to happen now? Or is there a reason that we could just say, we believe in it, we care about it, but come back in a year and show us that it's improving?
I'll start just a second. So we have been looking at, when we originally applied for these replications 2 years ago, had been working with a piece of land that we had identified, had wanted to use this piece of land. Scott, you can jump in, or I'm going to keep going. But the piece of land had some limitations on it as far as entrance and exit routes. So we've been working with the city to get through the issues on the land, and we couldn't get through the issues on the time in a way to responsibly open a school. So we returned the charter that we had replicated for this. We are still working with that same piece of land and have now reached a point where we are successfully.
Correct. Yeah, we've gone through our first submittal with Pinal County at this point. We have acquired the land, so we're in that process already, and so that's why
This was a school we had planned on opening. It's just the land. We hit snafu after snafu, right. So we didn't stop with the land. We kept moving with the land, and then realized that we don't have enough time to responsibly open the charter. So we stopped, returned the charters, and said we'll just attempt to do, or ask to do another replication, so that the land is there, we're ready to go. We just now
need to build a building.
Lost the chart, yeah.
So you do own the land. So I'm just trying to. If you don't build a school this year, you will pay. I don't know. Own a mortgage on that land, but you won't have any other costs that you have coming at you. You don't have to build the building, for example.
Other than what we put in as far as the money expense for architect and doing all the things for the county at this point.
So then, so obviously, we gave you a school to replicate. You ran into these just unforeseeable issues. And we have a timeline, right?
Yes.
A timetable, a
Yes.
ticking clock on when you have to get your charter up and operational. That didn't happen. And so now you in good faith went out and bought the land.
We kept moving on that piece,
Yeah.
because our goal was always thinking we were going to get through these issues in time to use the charter we had replicated, and it just came down to a point where it's like, it's just no longer responsible to rush this build and try to open this quickly. And that's when we turned our charter back in and said we'll just have to come back with another charter.
I just have. Sorry. So can I just ask some questions about what you just handed me? Although
Yes.
now you're not looking at it, right? So, so just so I'm reading this properly. So like it says EL grade 9, 42.5%. Is that just your proficiency score, or is that taking into account your 4-year grad rate, college and career rate?
No, you're just looking at our proficiency.
These are just the proficiency
Those
scores.
are just.
No, yeah. Approach the bench. Just kidding. I've always wanted to say that. Those are just proficiency scores. Okay, so then can you tell me why are these so different than what's reported? Is it because you're percent tested? Did you have a really low percent tested?
Nope. So when you're seeing scores reported, If you're taking them off from the state file, I can tell you the whole answer. If you're taking them from the state file, you're getting a straight proficiency from the state file. If you're taking them from the schools, that's from our web page, our internal page behind the data behind our grade. Though that data is determined, remember that we have weighted for if you're 0.6 on partially proficient, 1.0 on proficient, and 1.6 on highly proficient. So you see a weighting versus coming straight from the state file, which is totally unweighted.
So the 26% is unweighted. Is just raw data.
It's got to be the opposite.
Is that the state?
Unfortunately, I cannot answer that question. We pulled directly from the state file what they publicly release as proficiency scores. And I did just verify that it's correct.
Talk into the mic.
Sorry. Yeah. We're trying to figure out math. So we think that this is we think what you're looking at is the unweighted, because I'm assuming that then what you're saying is that if there's a student who's partially proficient, that is going to be that's not going to be a full 1%. So that's what brings those numbers down to the 26% that we're looking at. Really basic math in Rachel's head, right? Because the big number that we get here is 26, but those numbers are 50, 40.
But I think it's the opposite is what I'm saying. I think the 26% number, so in other words, they're getting points here for having students based off of like growth and things. Because I don't
the growth. Okay. Then I'm out, tapped out. Math is, I don't know. We need a calculator.
So if you pull from the state file, that's where Rachel's pulling from. Right. You're pulling directly from the state file. It's a total unweighted. That's just blank. That's what it is. It doesn't talk about phase students. It doesn't talk about anything. This is just every single kid in your school. Is that you're pulling? Yes. Yeah. So you're pulling from a state file. These kids that you're looking at, this is what our grade is based on. These are saying these are the kids you had in your school for the entire length of the school year, right? From October 10th to up until the first day of testing. So it gives you that, and it also says we're going to take these kids that you've had for the entire length of your school year, and we are going to weight their performance. Oh. So if you had a highly proficient child, we're going to weight them at 1.6. If you had a proficient child, we're going to rate them at 1, and a partially proficient child, we're going to rate them at 0.6. When you pull from a state file, that's great, but you're pulling. It's two different things you're looking at.
So you're saying the 26% is the state file with no weighting.
No weighting, and it's every single kid that took that test in your school.
Yeah, well, and it explains why you could have a 16% Ames, but have a B school, right?
Well, no, because Ames is only calculated for bonus points. So you could have 0% and have an A school for Ames. Well, I agree, but you should talk to her.
Superintendent.
So these are the students, when you look at the sheet that I just handed you, that's also coming from the ADE, and those are our data sheets. When our grades are released, it's all the data that comes in behind our grades to support our grade. And those are the students that we had in our school for a full academic year, and then those students are weighted.
But the state one is also FAE only, from my understanding.
No, the state, I don't believe is a FAE. That's not a FAE only file. Your state file is not a FAE file. It's all students that took the test, yeah. Because it gives you complete number of kids tested. When you look at that, sorry, I actually know these answers. I said in the committee. The state file is all the kids that tested. So it shows you every single kid that took the 9th grade test. It gives you a total number of those kids, and then you have their proficiency score.
You're right. Your static file shows, that's what you're referring to. The static file shows all of them. But for what's calculated, for your percentage of students, your passing rate should just be FAE.
Correct. So the static file belongs to the school, and it's a school static file. The state file is the big, you're looking at the big state file, correct, Rachel? Yeah. It's the all over state file. The state file where that data is all students in the school, all students that tested. So if you look at the state file and you say, can I just see who's in the room here?
No, I mean, I understand. I work with I work with the static files and stuff as well too. I just I just haven't had confirmation that what you're telling me is 26%. Why we wouldn't use what the state is using, which is FAE students. But I think that's minutia. I guess we're probably getting stuck on something that doesn't fully matter. I'm confused as to where everybody else is at.
Yeah. So that state file. The static file belongs, I'm going to take the static file out because that's the school's file, but I'm talking about the state file right now. Every student that walks into our school is in that file that took the test. So if we're giving the algebra or English 9 test, for example, and I have a student that walks in the day before testing.
Right.
They take the English 9 test, they're in the state file. If I have everybody that shows up at your school on the day of testing that took that test at your school was in the state file. And then we jump into the business rules for grades. And the business rules for grades, and we talk about the static file, that's on,
Right, and then
that's on our
it's
page.
FAE.
That
Yeah.
FAE contains everybody, but you could break it down by putting your FAE kids in. So if you go into our static file, pull our FAE kids, and then weight our FAE kids according to the state rules, those are our scores.
And so you're saying the difference between FAE versus, so if you just included FAE students, your ELA average would be 43%.
I am saying that,
Ish.
and
That's rough math.
and the state's saying that, yes. Not, I mean, these, I didn't make these
So
up
just so
myself.
everybody can see, I mean, what she handed was very different results. My problem with this is every school that we've, I mean, I think that's something for the board to, I think that's something we need to think about is, you know, that kind of opens up a whole new can of worms, unfortunately for me, because no other school presented this to us. I mean, I don't know if that's something to take into consideration or not, or maybe the other school should have, I'm not sure. But this is, I mean, what's presented, those numbers are what we go by. Do you have, well, and then of course you probably don't have years backdated to see if the trend is increasing or decreasing, because that's really more of the issue is the decreasing trend of ELA and science. But this is only 1 year, right? So that
Yep.
doesn't show me whether or not your trend is increasing or decreasing.
Mind.
And maybe this is, we're talking about, I guess I just don't know where everybody else is at.
I would
I'm
say pull
actually
the
on
18, but the 18 is
Southridge High
locked
School.
down right now. Can you pull 18? I'm sorry.
From the Arizona Department, and they're showing science at 19 versus 16 on the report. Math is lower at 31. Right? Just doing like these numbers don't make sense to the state either. There's algebra 1,
Well, you would need all three maths together.
but you would compare that to that. I'm not.
Right.
I'm getting 34.
Yeah.
The students that you're looking at, those are the students that we've had in our school all year long. That we were educated from day when school opened up until the day of testing. The students in the state file could have arrived anywhere between after the 10th day and up until the day of testing.
Right.
So when we compare data at the school level, we look at the students that we have had all year long and we're responsible for educating all year long.
On the AZ school report card, do you know if those are FACE students? The AZ merit data that's being pulled? Because what we're showing is from the school report card, that's not matching this document, which doesn't match our document either. Well, there you go.
Something we can work on.
I guess maybe we should just see where everybody's at with it.
Before we do that, President Sitzman, I do have a question. You included in your application a management agreement with Leona Group, and I'm looking at year 4 comp, and it looks like it's at 10% of revenue. Did you do any pro formas or projections with school revenue to ensure that you can meet that obligation?
Scott Shelley's our budget manager, sorry, not just.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
So your agreement with Leona Group requires you to pay 10% of revenue to them in year 4, which is 2023, 2024. And I'm wondering if you ran projections to ensure that you could meet that
Absolutely.
contractual requirement.
Absolutely, that's been included.
And what
Okay.
were the basis of those projections?
I do a budget based on our current funding level, and then I have it projected based on a moderate increase to our student funding, and then included in that is the management fees in there to project at each of those levels. With our management agreement, if the school isn't able to do that, we will defer our fees too.
And did the nonprofit engage in a comp study at all to ensure that 10% of revenue is equal to market?
No, we did not.
Why not?
I did more of the budget stuff that might have been done on our CEO's behalf. I can't speak for him whether he's done that
the
as well.
school might have, the nonprofit may have.
They may have. I just can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
Does anyone from the school know whether that was completed?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is whether there was a comp study done on the revenue, on the market rate being paid to Leona for the management services they're providing, because it's a nonprofit. So the nonprofit needs to ensure that, at least ensure that that's market.
I'm afraid I don't understand the question.
Okay. So when, oftentimes when nonprofits enter into a large contract for services or goods or anything like that, what they'll do is they'll go out and run comp studies. They'll have reports pulled nationally to ensure that they're paying market rate, okay, so that they're not overpaying for goods and services. And so my question is whether such a report was run before you entered into this agreement.
We are calling for an answer right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have the answer.
Make
Yeah.
sure that we're, that
Understandably. Oh, yeah, of course.
everything they could have to be good stewards of the state funds here, and that, we're not going to end up 3 years from now saying, hey, actually 8% of revenue was a lot bigger than we thought, and we're in trouble, Charter Board.
No, absolutely.
I don't
I understand
want to
that.
hear
No,
so,
I understand.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you've ever run across that with our group, is we've always deferred, if the school has any trouble paying, we've always deferred the management fee, so that has never put a school into financial trouble.
So generally, I'm kind of sensing from board members that that we're not able to find a pathway. I don't know, Matt, is there a pathway?
Oh, look, this is just background information. I wanted it for the record. I don't know that it's necessarily determinative on the outcome here. I thought it'd be good to know, and I think comp studies are a good thing for nonprofits to be doing when they're engaging in these agreements. So, I think it'd be good for the charter industry as a whole, so, at least when it's a nonprofit. But like I said, I don't think it's determinative one way or the other. I just
Gotcha. Okay.
I did want to make sure that their budgeting and their pro formas ensured that they could meet their contractual obligations. But,
No. Okay.
that remains to be seen. So.
Okay. Understood. I just didn't know if the questioning changed or put you in a different position or.
No, I mean I'll kind of like Jim. I know a little bit about business, and I'll defer to you guys on education. So.
Okay.
I'm just going to say, and I don't know if I get to make a closing statement, but I.
Sorry, I have an answer. I just spoke with Michelle Kay, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and she said, although we haven't done it this year, this is something we engage with regularly, not only in Arizona, but Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and that for the services that we provide, what they have found and continue to find is that our rate is commensurate with market ask out there. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Is there, Ms. Berg, is there any last comments you'd like to make?
Yes, I would. I think if you look at the scores of the students that we've been responsible for all year long, that those scores are strong scores. We're at the 65% in math. We really work with our students on math. I understand your concerns about science. Those are our concerns too, and we make sure that when our students have the math under their belt where they can handle the science and the English, that we do move them in to science, not only at our school level, but making sure they have access to AP biology. And our students in AP biology are earning an average score of 3, and that they have access to dual enrollment science so that they are well prepared. I hear you on the science concern. That's how we've addressed it. On the English concern, what I'm going to just also is we have a fairly small school population. We have absolutely strived to take all students that come to our door, and we have never turned a student away for special ed status, ELL status, or despite this, where they're coming in with proficiency status. And that's what our strength is. That's what we want to be able to offer the same down in Santan Valley.
Gotcha.
I just wanted to add as well, 2 years ago when we came before the board and received this charter, I on Leona Group was probably more excited than anyone, having I live in the Santan area, having lived there for 15 years, knowing what the schools are about, knowing what the schools are like. Having this option for the community is very much needed. And to be in the situation now, because we ran into some snafus, we would have had the charter otherwise. And just as a consideration, I just want to put that out there, that there is definitely a need there for charter high schools in the Santan area. Thank you.
I have to make a decision right now. It's no, but if I have time to figure out what this means, I don't agree with what they're saying.
Do it.
All right. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to deny the request for the replication charter of American Charter Schools Foundation, DBA Ridgeview College Preparatory High School to establish a charter school for the reason of low academic achievement.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Swanson. Alexis, if you could call a roll, please.
Vice President Lee,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett, Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Close,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Nay.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov,
I'm going to abstain.
President Zinsman.
No. And if I could just quickly explain my vote, I think, obviously I'm not excited about where the academics are, but I know that we did give you all a school 2 years ago, and obviously there were some situations that beyond your control, and I know I hear from multiple charters that are in that same boat of that they've been given a charter, either a new charter, a replication, or an expansion, and run into these very similar problems. So I definitely have a heart for what happened in this situation. I think Ms. Lee can obviously speak for herself, but I think we'd want to dive into the data a little deeper with you to understand, because I think we all recognize that you do have a special population that you choose to serve, and that people choose to have you as their educator. And so I would love an opportunity to kind of dive into that data a little bit better. And Ms. Lee, I'll let you speak for yourself, but I would love to see you come back before the board if there's a way to get there on this.
And I do have,
Well, let's finish the vote and then you can
Sorry,
comment.
yeah.
And
Motion passes through majority vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ms. Lee.
No, I echo the same comment that I believe in what you're doing, and I understand that proficiency doesn't define what you're doing. In fact, it's never going to, because of what you're choosing to do, and that's my heart is for that. I need to spend some time, and I think maybe staff, we need to meet, if we can, about what this data versus the data that I'm seeing, because it's a huge discrepancy, and I need to process this, because I think this is important, especially for a school in this situation. And I just don't think there's the time right now to do that for full understanding with this is exactly where numbers are coming from for sure, and this is where they're, I need time to process this. And so, but I'm stuck making the decision right this second, and so that's the decision that's been made. When can they come back to do a? Is it closed for the year, like until next year? I mean, could they come back to do a replication?
No, a replication can be considered by the board for the upcoming year. Anytime May board meeting is the latest board meeting they could go on. If a new replication this one's been denied at this time based on the vote, if they file a new replication application, the soonest board staff could get it back on the agenda is January.
Okay. So then maybe prior to January, I would like to have a discussion with board staff in regards to this data.
Yeah, and Vice President Mary Ellen Lee, if I could comment on that. So when I've been on site visits, I've seen some of those charts. That's information that's not available to us very readily, because it goes through the AD Connect system, which is something we're trying to access. The other thing is that the proficiency scores that we're utilizing, these are the scores that, based on that static file, is the only information that we had available for a very long time. So these are reports that are just recently coming out. I believe once the proficiency data came out, certainly, after December 13th, we should have, valid scores, valid letter grades, things that we can use. So we're just in that transition, I believe, and so when these new charts are coming out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I think we'd love to have a conversation, understand some things better, and perhaps some additional conversations with you about how, if there's a pathway to do something like this, because I think we all believe in, high schools, charter high schools. We all believe in the population that you guys choose to serve and that chooses your model. Because I think you pick some of the hardest kids to educate, and I love that you have a heart for that. So let's keep talking, I think, is what the vote really means. So if we could do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, I2, Candeo Schools.
Candeo Schools, Inc. submitted an application to replicate its charter, which has been in operation since fiscal year 2009. If approved, the new charter will be held by the same entity as the existing charter. The proposed school will be named Candeo North Scottsdale and has a target start date of August 5th, 2020. The charter will have an enrollment cap of 540 and will serve students in grades K through 8 in North Scottsdale.
All right, is there a representative from Candeo here? Thank you for your patience. I know we're going into extra innings here.
Thank you for having us. It's good afternoon, I believe, at this moment.
Exactly. Yeah.
President Sensman, Vice President Lee, Superintendent Hoffman, and board members, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Stephanie Musser, and I am the Executive Director and Charter Representative for Candeo Schools, and I have with me Corin Lane, who will be the head of school of the North Scottsdale campus, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, are there any questions for the representatives? I would just say that I live in Northwest Peoria, and so while my kids did not go to Candeo, I know of your reputation, not only of how you financially, operationally manage your schools, but also academically, what your performance looks like, and so I know the Candeo brand, and I know the work that you do is great, and I think the community that you're moving to will be well served by you. So,
Thank you.
I don't know if other folks have.
No, just commenting. I mean, your proficiency obviously is amazing, but what I think should also be mentioned is so is your growth, right? It's not just your proficiency, which sometimes we don't always see. So, I'm excited and I'm ready for.
Yep, if you could, please.
Yeah. I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to grant the replication charter to Candeo Schools, Inc. to establish the school Candeo North Scottsdale to serve grades K through 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Rice. Alexis?
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett? Dr. Crockett? Mr. Close?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanoff?
Aye.
President Sensman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next up, item I3, Legacy Traditional Avondale.
Legacy Traditional School Avondale submitted an application to replicate its charter, which has been in operation since fiscal year 2012. If approved, the new charter will be held by a new entity, Legacy Traditional School North Phoenix, and hold a contract with the same education service provider as Avondale. The proposed school has a target start date of August 3rd, 2020. If approved, the charter will have an enrollment cap of 735 and will serve students in grades 6 through 8 near 99th Avenue and Camelback Road in Phoenix.
Excellent. Representatives from Legacy? Welcome.
Thank you, President Sensman and members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to come again for a replication. We have identified the need to offer additional enrollment opportunities in the Phoenix area. The current enrollment and waitlists at our Phoenix campus, as well as competitive and demographic analysis, support the need to offer additional students the opportunity for school choice. The current Phoenix campus had the ability to purchase land to allow for a new campus to be built and have the ability to rent that facility back. Enrollment in Phoenix campus has increased from 1229 in 1819 to 1430 in 1920. The significant wait list in the Phoenix area calls for a need to grow. We have over 680 students on the current wait list. The forecasted population within a 5-mile radius is 9.8 between 2017 and 2022. 19,660 students ages 5 through 14 live within a 3-mile radius of the school, and over 55,000 live within a 5-mile radius, more than any other of our legacy campuses. The competitive analysis of the area shows a strong demand for a high-rated education, as only 5 of the 65 schools in a 5-mile radius received an A rating. With that, we look forward to the board's approval of another legacy campus.
Excellent. Are there any questions for the legacy representative? I wish they could all be this easy. So congratulations on your scores. And obviously those are fantastic. And I have had the opportunity to come out and check out your school and several of your schools. And so I know what an exceptional job you're doing and what the growth is out in that area. So I guess keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, same. I just, for the first time, was able to visit last week. And what was really exciting about your campus was how excited the teachers were. I mean, it was, I think I got invited back by the PE teacher to do the fairs and all these things that she was doing that were just so incredible for the PE department to see. And so it was just really exciting to see the excitement that your teachers had for their subject area and for their students. And it was really evident when touring your campuses. So I appreciated that.
Thank you.
So with that, I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to grant the replication charter to Legacy Traditional School North Phoenix to establish the school Legacy Traditional Charter School North Phoenix to serve grades 6 through 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Rice? You're on it today.
I know.
All right. Alexis, if you can call the roll, please.
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett?
Aye.
Mr. Close?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanov?
Aye.
President Sensman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, next up, item J, academic accountability criteria for expansions. Oh, that's you. I thought I saw Andrea here earlier, so I didn't know.
She's next.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So consideration to modify the academic performance eligibility criteria for expansion requests in fiscal year 2020, including replication and transfer applications in the board's academic performance framework and guidance. The proposed change will impact charter holders that operate a charter school identified per comprehensive support and improvement. At the October 15, 2019 meeting, the board directed staff to open the proposed change for public comment and consider other eligibility measures for non-alternative charter schools that do not use the On Track to Graduate measure. The following proposal was open for public comment on October 18th, and the window for public comment closed on November 7th. Board staff received written feedback from 4 organizations and included those comments with your materials. Many of the comments are in support of the proposed made at the October 15th meeting. A separate comment addresses distance learning schools that have not been issued A through F letter grades since fiscal year 2014. Based on public comment and feedback from stakeholders, board staff is proposing to remove school improvement designation measure from the eligibility criteria for expansion requests, which makes charter holders operating schools with a letter grade of A, B, or C eligible to submit an expansion request. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, board members, are there any questions regarding this?
I think, just
please.
Thanks, staff. This is good work and quick turnaround, so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just figuring out how I'm reading this. Okay. I move that the board adopt the revisions to academic eligibility criteria used for expansion requests in fiscal year 2020 as presented to the board today with the modifications discussed. Presented,
yeah.
thank you. Further, I move that the board direct staff to update the relevant documents to reflect board actions at this meeting.
Second by Mr. Close. Alexis, if you can call the roll, please.
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Yanov?
Aye.
President Senseman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Moving on to item K, compliance matters. It's audit time.
First, we'll do the AFRs.
Yeah.
So President Senseman, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. Before I provide the background for the late annual financial reports, or AFRs, Paramount Education Studies, Inc., item K1A, has now submitted its fiscal year 2019 AFR to the department and therefore does not require your consideration today and should be removed from the agenda.
Which one was that?
1A.
Thank you.
State law requires charter schools to annually submit an AFR to ADE by October 15th. The information collected in the AFR is used in the Superintendent of Public Instruction's annual report that is submitted to the legislature. Vision Charter School, Inc. has still not submitted its fiscal year 2019 AFR to ADE and remains on today's agenda. The board may vote to withhold up to 10% of Vision's monthly state aid apportionment until the fiscal year 2019 AFR is submitted to and successfully processed by ADE. Prior to today's meeting, Vision's charter representative reached out to board staff. The charter representative indicated that due to health issues, she would be unable to attend today's meeting. According to the charter representative, she is working with the school's business service provider to upload the AFR. I am available for questions.
And really quick, was Vision going to surrender their charter? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, at the September meeting, the board approved a settlement agreement. Previously, the board had issued a notice of intent to revoke because the charter holder did not meet the board's operational performance expectations. In September, the board approved a settlement agreement, and the term of that settlement agreement was that the charter would be surrendered at the end of this school year.
Okay. But the charter operator it's going to, even though they're surrendering their charter, they still intend to file their AFR, correct?
That is
what they've told you.
That is correct. Okay. But you do have the option to withhold funds if you would like to do that.
I move to find Vision Charter School, Inc. is not in compliance with state law and its charter contract for its failure to timely submit the annual financial report and approve withholding 10% of the charter holder's monthly state aid appointment until the fiscal year 2019 AFR is submitted and successfully processed by ADE.
Second.
Second by Mr. Swanson. Alexis, if you can call the roll, please.
Vice President Lee?
Aye. Sorry.
Superintendent Hoffman?
Aye.
Dr. Crockett?
Aye.
Mr. Close?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Ms. Rice?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Oh, aye.
President Senseman?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Everyone's blood sugar's low. All right, moving on to item K2.
President Senseman, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. Related to agenda item K2, certain charter holders have now submitted complete audits to the board and therefore do not require your consideration today. The charter holders that should be removed from the agenda are, under first year late, item A, accelerated elementary and secondary schools. Item B, Cochise Community Development Corporation. Item C, The Farm at Mission Montessori Academy, LLC. Item D, Fountain Hills Charter School, Inc. Item I, Little Lamb Community School. Item J, Painted Desert Montessori, LLC. And then under second consecutive year late, item M, Edupreneurship, Inc. And item N, Parkview School, Inc.
Oh, can I just ask you a question? Since we have Vision popping up again, it's only a total of 10% that we can't withhold. 20.
You
We
cannot.
can't do this twice, can we, for vision?
You can include them in the motion, but you are correct that the maximum amount withheld will be 10%.
Gotcha. It just means we really, really mean it. Okay.
So state law requires charter schools to annually submit a financial audit and compliance questionnaire. For many of the board's charters, the audit is due 4.5 months after the end of the fiscal year or by November 15th. Pursuant to board rule, a charter that fails to submit a complete audit by the audit deadline may be subject to charter oversight. 95% of the 305 audits due November 15th were timely submitted to the board. However, 7 charter holders have still not submitted complete fiscal year 2019 audits to the board and remain on the agenda. Among other options, the board may vote to withhold up to 10% of the charter holder's monthly state aid until a complete fiscal year 2019 audit is submitted to the board. If the board decides to withhold funds, the withholding would begin with the charter holder's December 1st payment. Once the charter holder has submitted a complete audit, the withheld funds will be returned with the charter holder's next regularly scheduled payment. Pursuant to state law, the charter school must be allowed to address the board before the board makes a final determination on whether to withhold funds. I am available for questions.
Excellent. And Andrea, do you know, are there representatives from all the schools that were not taken off here?
I believe some of them indicated to me that they would be present today.
So we'll just go in order. So is there someone here from Florence Crittenden? If you might come up, please. If you could state your name for the record, please.
My name is Rod Kemp. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Florence Crittenden Services. We are a little unique in the charter school world because our agency is basically a behavioral health agency. That's our history from 1896. I believe we started the Girls Leadership Academy in 2012, and that is about 20% of the agency's business. So through no fault of the charter school, our audit is late this year. We're working through some issues with some of our other programs, with our endowment funds, just a few things that we haven't been able to issue the audit yet. So that's the reason that it's late. Our agreed upon procedures audit is complete. The LCQ is complete, and we did go ahead and submit that, even though we knew that it would be an incomplete submission because the audit was missing. So we decided to go ahead and do that because that's been complete for some time now. And we just ask for your mercy to give us a little extension until the, when is your December board meeting? We will have it done by first or second week. We have a draft on its way on Friday. So it should be the first or second week of December that we have it finished.
Okay. So that's your I guess your projection is will be before December 13th.
Before the next board meeting. I don't know what that date is. But
Gotcha. Okay. But imminent. So Andrea or Joanna, remind me that what's the timing? So if we were on any of this one or any of the future ones, if we were to say we're going to withhold 10% and they get it in by the next board meeting, when we communicate with ADE on the withholding, what's that timetable?
The time frame to affect the December payment, which is the next payment, we will be notifying ADE tomorrow morning. Okay. And so in the letter, should you choose to withhold funds from any schools today for their audit, the letter that goes out to them notifying them will say, if your audit is not submitted by 11:59 p.m. today, then we will notify ADE to withhold the funds.
Let's take West Adams Street.
Just started yelling at me. Should they subsequently submit the audit, likely the deadline to affect the January payment will be around December 20th. Could be a little earlier with the holidays. But if they get it submitted prior to that deadline, then those funds would be returned with the January payment. Okay. So any withheld funds would go back in January.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Vicki, do we need to do a motion on each one of these, or could we do them all together after we hear from everyone? What would you prefer?
If you have the same decision regarding each one, you can do one motion. Okay. But if you're going to do different ones, then
Gotcha.
Let's put each one together.
Okay.
Under a motion.
Well, board members, let me just ask, are we willing to allow Florence Crittenden to December to get their audit in, or are we?
I am opposed.
Okay. I see heads nodding. Okay. I'm assuming that might be across the board.
I mean, it's fair to say, I mean, I understand audits are complex and things happen, but this is, we're talking about the state's money and obligations that you made to the state to complete an audit timely and provide that to the state so that we can see about your financial health. And so I think the pressure of the risk of getting dinged 10% is something that I think is an important measure for us to be able to levy on charter holders if they're not meeting their commitments. So that's going to be my stance on this. And there's only one second consecutive year late, so I wouldn't consider asking to revoke charters or do anything at this point in time.
Yeah.
But that's just going to be my opinion.
Okay. And I'm inclined as well to do that. Okay. So I think we'll take them all in one motion.
Can I have one question? I did see in the ARS that it says that if you're not required to do a single audit, which of course we're not, and if you also do not, what was it? If your expenses, if your total expenses are less than $2 million but more than $700,000, which our fiscal 19 AFR is right around 1.4 million that you do an audit biannually. Would that be the case for us?
I'd defer to Andrea on that.
That provision
has math.
only applies to school districts. That does
Oh, it
not
doesn't
apply
apply to
to charter schools. All charter schools are required to have audits done annually.
That's the answer to that one.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, item F, Institute for Transformative Education. Is there a representative? If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Vince Fuentes. I'm the Director of Finance for Institute for Transformative Education. Superintendent Hoffman, President Sessamon, and board members. I sincerely regret that the audit for the Institute for Transformative Education was not submitted by November 15th deadline. We had submitted all the necessary and requested information to our auditor, and the auditor has assured us the completed report will be submitted to the board by the end of this week. We have already analyzed what factors led to the late submission of the audit report, and we have developed the corrective action plan and shared it with the appropriate staff members to ensure it will not happen again. We understand the importance of audit submission deadlines, and our reports will not be late in future years.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, item G and H. We'll do G and H together. Lifelong Learning Research Institute. Is there a representative from? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item K, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, Arizona. Is there a representative? Welcome. If you could state your name, please.
My name is David Bleier. I'm the president of the board of directors for STEM Arizona. With me today is Matthew Roll. He's the principal of our school, Da Vinci Tree Academy. We're here just to, of course, apologize. We understand the importance of having these reports in a timely manner, and that not having them in a timely manner adversely affects y'all. So we regret that. The good news is it is wrapping up. We're partnering with Aspire and our CPA, Brett Backlund, both excellent resources to make sure this is done as soon as possible. Please.
To ensure this doesn't happen again, we've done a full contract, for a full service contract for this year with Aspire, per the recommendation of the Charter Association. And one of the things that delayed us was our daycare and other nonprofit activities. And so we are actually splitting we're spinning off the daycare and other nonprofit activities into a separate legal entity so that next year there's nothing delaying us. And so we just wanted to come up here and let you know because we do take this extremely seriously. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Next up, item L, Valley of the Sun Waldorf Education Association. Is there anyone here from that organization? Okay. And then going into second year, there was no one here from Vision before, so I'm assuming there will not be anyone on this one. So with that, is there a motion for, and make sure you list all of the
Yeah, I will.
letter.
Yep. I move to find that the following charter holders, and I believe I can just list the letters, so K, E, KF, KG, KH, KK, KL, and KO are in noncompliance with state law and their charter contracts for their failure to submit their audits and approve withholding 10% of each charter holder's monthly state aid apportionment until a complete fiscal year 2019 audit is submitted to the board.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Close. Alexis?
Vice President Lee,
Aye.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Mr. Close,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Ms. Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Yanov,
Aye.
President Sensman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Last up, item L, summary of current events, future meetings. So next month, obviously in December, we have all the new charter applications. You have on your date or your calendar 2 dates saved. And so the hope is, if everyone is willing, if it's possible to get through in one day and maybe kind of go into extra innings, if that's possible to have it on one day. Because I know State Board was maybe needing this room on the second day. I haven't heard back from them if that's still the case or not, but I think that's in play. So the hope would be that we could get through all of them in one day, but it may be a very long day. If that's okay, or plan accordingly, bring a sack lunch. And so that'll be next month. We're also trying to keep all presentations off the agenda for the December meeting, so that way we can be very focused on what the purpose of that December meeting is. So that's where we're at in that. Does anyone else have anything else for good of the order? All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here today.